I just want to start, like, I appreciate you guys doing this. You guys all know I was trying to host a clinic, and that fell apart with the rest of the world.
You just canceled yours after the Japanese league went down.
Exactly. But
He was the last one.
yeah, you three though, like, I talk to you three the most of my life and give you guys my crazy ideas, and you mostly tell me they're good ideas. I think just to keep me sane. So I just want to thank you guys for that, and you guys all push me, and mostly just thankful for you guys' friendship. So I just wanted to start showing some thankfulness for that. And
Awesome.
Yeah.
The other reason you three were important to me getting on this is the diversity. Got a couple Jews on here. Got a kid from Texas that lived in the Midwest. Got a black guy from New York City that went to Indiana, then UMass.
Hey, I'm not from New York now. They'll try to go quarantine me.
But like Tommy, you've been a head coach. Ryan, your time's obviously coming for that, probably sooner rather than later. Zach, you were manager at an SEC school in Vandy, and then we're with the Lakers for 2 years, now with the Big Ten with Illinois. So I like the diversity. None of us are competing against each other. Maybe a little Williams, Carleton.
No, we're good.
Here or there, but
we're good.
This year, no.
We had enough problems this year as was already.
And then obviously, I'm gonna try to share my screen. Can you guys see that?
Yep, it's up now. Yep.
Okay. So obviously, it's just weird times for everyone. But I think just not worrying about the uncontrollable, making the most of this is what it's all about. Someone sent this to me the other day. I just thought it was kind of important to. Tommy, you want to read that for me?
I can. Okay, but honestly, how privileged are so many of us that during a global pandemic, we can just stay warm at home, reading, working, still being educated, creating, talking to our loved ones with little worries, and a fridge stocked with food. Do remind yourself to be grateful today.
So I think, that's just like really important. And like coaches, we just adjust and adapt, and that's kind of what it's all about. I had to throw on a couple of humorous ones. Zach, you want to read this one for us?
Crazy times we were living in. I used to cough to hide a fart. Now I fart to hide a cough.
That's very true.
So, I saw a couple of these. This is just like, just do it with the slipper for home, which is pretty funny. This is probably what at least Zach and I have looked like the last 2 weeks. And, so obviously I think humor is good in times like these. And I'll send this to all you guys, so we don't have to read all of these pickup lines, but there's some good pickup lines for us bachelors out there that this can provide for us. A nice little guideline. Obviously, with I've kind of tried to start this continuous coaching collaborative company. I've done a lot of work with it when I haven't been sleeping these last 2 weeks, and it's just really a time for all of us to get better. I have no idea where this is going, but I know it's going to go somewhere. And I'll circle back with all you guys, next day or two this weekend, and we'll just see kind of how it evolves naturally. Maybe we'll just do this again next Friday, and it's like a good recap at the end of the week, especially for the dads out there that are working triple time.
And not getting paid any extra money either.
Yeah,
absolutely none.
It's a guaranteed deal, but it's on a non-guaranteed contract.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And there's no out clause.
Exactly. I think it would be cool if we all maybe brought one other person in the next time we do this. And I think maybe not from your program. Like, I think I want you guys to share this with everyone, especially in your program. So I think that could be something cool, or maybe we all present on something longer. So we'll just kind of see how it evolves and how long we're all on house arrest for. But thank you for signing the release documents. My lawyer is very pleased with me.
Hey, Jonah,
Yeah,
for real though, I have a question for you because I hadn't. This is the first time like I heard like when the email came in and there was a logo and all this stuff.
yeah,
Like I hadn't heard you like so like how did I guess I kind of know how it came about, but like what are you trying to accomplish? Like the vision, I guess the utopian vision, and then maybe like the first steps.
yeah,
Maybe the clinic was part of it. I don't know.
yeah. I guess I just think like all I do is during the season is watch basketball, and like all I do is I call you guys and we talk basketball. And I think there's a lot of other people like us. So I kind of think of my answer to your question a couple different ways. Like I think first being in Sacramento, most of our staff was new there. So trying to connect to that local community, whether it's San Francisco, Sacramento, Reno, that whole kind of Northern California basketball community. I think just continuing my learning, like it's really, and you guys are in all academic settings, like it's really easy for your junior to know how to get better in the classroom, how to get better in the weight room, how to get better on the court. Like there's always constant feedback. I think in the NBA, all you're doing is the year never ends, whether it's summertime, postseason, preseason, January, but it's sometimes hard to continue your own education. Good active talking right there from the deep end. But I think that in a selfish way, I just want to bring people into, really that first clinic that I was thinking about doing so that I can learn and continue my education. And then it's really the third thing, and I kind of wanted a lot of younger professionals along with some sprinkled in veterans and some people that have done different things at all levels. And then down the road, Tommy, you're going to be a head coach again. Like, what if you hire Zach? Or when Kirsch gets a job, could he hire you? Like we don't know. And it's not just limited to us 4 people. But that's kind of the third networking part, that it's just such a small community that we're all going to help and get help from others throughout this, our careers. So I'd say it's really those 3 things, if that answers your question.
No, it does too. It does. It definitely. I mean, and me with this and Ryan a little bit from talking at the Final Four, but Zach may not. But like, how passionate I am about about wanting to develop coaches.
Yeah.
And like I actually like when I saw that you had the business thing, like all day I was thinking like, like I've been really wanting to like start like a consulting thing, but like for the right way, like, you see rising coaches is doing their thing now. Like all these people are doing it like for money, you know what I mean? And obviously, yes, when you have a business, you deserve to get paid for it,
Yep.
but like the business that I want to really have is coaching. And like, I like Division III, I'm at Division III. We're coaching. We don't think we're going to make zillions of dollars.
Yeah.
We're coaching because we love it. So like, I'm cool with that. I like the lifestyle. But if you could do something else like within that you're passionate about that could help others, and then you could get like a little bit of extra money. Maybe it's the vacation money each year for your family, whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like what you said too, is that just like collaborating and people sharing and coming together, like it always is like associated with like networking so much as like I like how it's like I'm meeting Zach organically through like how I met Ryan. You know what I mean? I met him through you and we've stayed in touch. Now I'm meeting Zach. Like I like that. That's just who I am. I've never gone to like the Final Four, some event thinking I'm gonna leave with the job or something. You may think like I would like to meet someone and then 10 years from now be able to ask. And I just think like in our business, we just don't like inform people the right way of how to do things like what we're doing and what you're trying to do with the business and what have you.
And I even think like networking doesn't have to be for a job. Like if Zach calls you and says, "Hey, how did you handle this situation?" Like that's a very important network. Like it's not always about that such an explicit reaction to a relationship. Like I think a lot of things, Ryan and I talked before a lot of games, and it's just bouncing ideas off each other. Hey, how do you teach this? And like that's very important. And like my long-term goal has been for a while to like open a coaching college when I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I'm an NBA coach for 50 years. And then after that, you can open
Better
that.
keep that beard trim.
Yeah.
Better keep the beard trim,
But like, I think for like I've known I wanted to be a coach at a high level for a long time. And you can go study sports psychology or sports management, but there's very few colleges, I think, that really offer good coaching programs. And even, if it's leadership, if it's sports psychology, if it's personal identity, that's like I made up my own college major when I finished at Lake Forest College, and that's what it was, kind of incorporating all of those. And like, that's why I really like the name Continuous Coaching Collaborative, because we're all continuous learners. We're all coaches. Like, I don't care if you're a video coordinator, you're a manager, you're assistant coach, you're associate head coach, like everyone's a coach. You're all impacting the program. And then it's collaborative. Like everything you were very inspirational to me my whole life just because of what you did for our 7th grade AAU team. And you don't need me to tell you that, but you can see that with the relationships I have with different guys we played with. You know what I mean? So that was kind of the vision. Yeah, I don't know if that answers.
Well, can I?
Yeah.
No, it does. And I just want to say, I want to kind of ask all of us, because it'll be an interesting perspective, because Zach's been in the pros and in college. Ryan and I have been college. The D League doesn't count for me because it's just a different beast. But like, I think a lot of times, I always hear this when it's professional coaches, like guys are not afraid to share or say what they're doing and this, that, and the other thing, because it's about us getting the players. You know what I mean? So like in college, you're competing to get the players. So you're kind of always maybe so scared to like give something away or this or that, because everything ends up leading to the competition of the players. Whereas in like the pros, there's a draft, there's free agency, like you're sort of competing for the players, but some markets aren't or whatever. Is that a real thing? Or is it just like maybe, I don't know, maybe the pros are kind of quote unquote over themselves and college coaches are? I mean, I don't know. But like, what do you guys think, kind of being like, Zach, you being in both worlds, Jonah, you knowing enough about both the worlds?
I'll take that. I think that, I know Jonah can definitely speak on this as well, kind of doing the advanced scouting thing last year. So much of that job is reliant on sharing with your peers. Like you're only as good as your peers are, getting play call sheets from them and getting, different diagrams from them when you're in a pinch and things like that. So I did come here this year with that in mind and did get some pushback early on sharing things and sharing play calls. And I do think that that's real. I think the mindset is a little bit different. There is some secretiveness, and I think that's definitely not a word, but
I understood you though.
Yeah. We can make up words here too, but there's a sense, I know, coaches on my staff have it, and I'm sure at every staff, like that you think that you can trick other people. You can trick the other team. You probably can't. And so much of it is about not what you do, but how you teach it and how you execute it. So, and I think that there is a better understanding of that in the NBA for whatever reason. I don't know the answer to, but I do definitely feel that.
Mm-hmm. It's funny too, because go ahead.
No, I'll add to that. I mean, I think that's right. Some of my what I would consider close friends or other assistants in our league, and we don't like. There's some things that are just like off. They're taboo that we just don't talk about, which is kind of dumb, in a lot of ways. And I would say a couple. Along with that point, I would say the older I've gotten to, like, the more I'm kind of like, whatever. Like, it does the stuff that you were protective of and secretive of 5-10 years ago, like it has less importance to me now than it maybe did, than it did 5 or 10 years ago, to be honest with you, from that standpoint, because I do think, to Zach's point, and, I do think the execution, and there's like what goes into winning. I mean, it's a lot of things, but it's like the coaching, like how good can you teach it? how good can your players execute, and how good are your players?
Mhm.
You know, and that's really, and that goes at all levels. Obviously, it's not a novel concept. And the last thing I would add to even just this piece right here about the networking piece is that, you know, for me, again, like I've seen that my circle has probably gotten smaller and tighter in the last like 5-10 years. And like the people that I communicate with, and there's a variety of factors that go into that. Like there's geographics, there's life, there's like a lot of factors, but like, you know, my circle has gotten a little bit smaller. And so I appreciate the collaborative opportunities, and I don't want to say I'm more protective of them, like not because of like the secrecy or anything like that, but just more of like the time and those things. And so I think for like Jonah, like this, like I'm excited about this opportunity just because it does provide another outlet with that and another opportunity to like to share those ideas. And like I bring this up, Jonah and I have had this conversation, even as I think back to our season and some of the stuff even that we'll talk about tonight, is like, you know, where like with our program, like where are we stale? Like where are the areas that we're getting stale? Like there's some value in like what you know, and like certainly your core principles and your core pillars and those things. But like, you know, so I think that's like, where can we continue to grow in those opportunities? And I'm probably a little bit more protective of some of that now, and like who I do that with. But like this is a great opportunity to do that. So I'm very excited for just that and like what Jonah's kind of put together from that standpoint.
I think the funny thing about being a coach is like you need to be stubborn in your beliefs of how you do things, but then you need to be open-minded enough to, like you said, like, all right, we're stale here, we got to do it better. And, you know, like I watched Steve Clifford do a talk the other day and from last summer, and like the first thing he's talking about is like, did we have enough offense? Like I always ask myself that. And he's doing like internal review that we all do, but it's like that's a real thing, but it also takes the right perspective to say, this is the way I do things every day, every year, and it's gotten us to this place, versus all that stuff is true, but I'm also going to look outside and maybe see how I can tweak it or even improve it. You know, it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And like, you know, I know he has a job now, Rick Pitino is like, if it ain't broke, fix it and make it better. Right.
Or if it's not broke, just give them some more money.
Yeah.
Build another dorm.
Exactly. Build the dorm.
Like along that point though, like I got to mention the article. It's like I'm sure Zach's got a ton of people contacting him, and I sent it to Jonah. But that Brad Underwood article about essentially looking at the defense and like the shift in the defensive philosophy from last year to this year, I thought was terrific. And like I printed that out. I gave it to our staff. I gave it to our student assistant. I sent it I gave it to our student assistant who basically does statistical analysis for us. I said, listen, like I want you to read this, take this, and like look at this, and give me some feedback on that and what you think. And so, I mean, so to that point, I'm sure Zach, you've got a lot of people that have reached out to you about that article.
Yeah. No, we've had a handful, and that was a big point of contention, kind of the whole off season. I stepped in right in the middle of that. But no, it's been really interesting just seeing all the people reach out and try to figure it. And right now we feel like we're kind of in that process of those tweaks still, and even adjusting things further. Like coach is amazing in that he's the most open-minded person that I've ever worked with. He'll listen to any idea that's brought to him, and he's probably going to try it, whether he believes in it or not. And then he'll see it and he'll make a decision if it's something that's worth keeping. And with the defense, it was, he knew it was time for a change. Our personnel was shifting a little bit, and then it had to be done. And he had some trouble giving that up, but because that's so much like his identity.
For sure.
I think.
How many, like, this is a college thing, because the pros, it doesn't apply really, because we haven't figured out how to play zone against the 2.9. But where I'm going with it is, how many of us are taking into consideration, let's say we have a team, we obviously want to be good enough to play in the tournament, right? Having our defense tournament ready. What I mean by that is, like, every year the tournament rolls around, all the rules that they talk about enforcing, they start really enforcing them in the tournament, because, the officials are, the guys who judge the officials are watching this, that, and the other thing. You could have the deepest. And then everybody's saying you don't need depth in the tournament because of all the timeouts. But when you only have 6 or 7 guys and you get in foul trouble on a couple ticky-tack fouls because of whatever,
Yep.
like I always wonder, like how many of us are thinking like, okay, our team can be this good. Now when we get there, like, how are we going to get it so that the rules of the game don't take us out? And like for me, and listen, I grew up playing man-to-man. I worshiped the Georgetown Hoyas. We picked up guys I pick up my player in the locker room and bring him to the court and bring him back. But at the same time, the way the rules are, maybe zone, maybe zone like Jonah, I've talked about it a lot about zone. So, but just like general, like the old Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. And we know how it is every year in the tournament. We've seen a game or two where like, it's Division 1, 2, and 3, where like that guy got in foul trouble, it changed the whole game. And I wondered, and I don't know specifically all of the changes that you guys made, Zach, as to why and stuff, but I'm curious, how much did the end of the season play into any of it? Did it not play any at all? Like, was it just an overall, like, like we need to just be better, or the personnel change type thing?
No, he took a pretty analytical approach to it, in terms of just areas that we can improve our defensive points per possession allowed, taking it as a one possession at a time sort of approach. And the areas that he identified was that we were in the bottom 20 in the country last year in free throw rate, and bottom 20 in the country in defensive rebounding. And that's because so much of our defense was predicated on pressure and denial. Fully in line of the ball, denial out to half court, and so we were giving up back cuts, giving up driving lanes with little support. So our goals were to limit our fouls, defend without fouling, and then defensive rebounding, staying out of rotation. So we tried to build something that would keep us out of rotation and keep us away from fouling. And we actually ended up in the top 30 in both of those categories on the season. So it was a good turnaround, but it was really a possession by possession sort of approach, not necessarily thinking about thinking about the end of the season. But the thing that was interesting was we'd always be preparing for a game, and he'd be, we'd be playing Michigan State. You're like, man, I wish we were still denying everything. Once every 5 games, you get that itch, and we'd have to talk him off that ledge. But he knew that was something that could win you games and get you big time upsets in a league. And even, he won 2 tournament games at Stephen F. Austin playing that way, get you upsets in the tournament.
Yeah.
And if a team is a bad point guard, he wasn't going to lose that game. But he wanted something more sustainable, that could last over time and doesn't have you scrambling in certain situations where you feel helpless.
For sure. Yeah.
I think
that's super interesting.
You go, Tommy.
No, I just, that was it. I just wondered why. I guess actually one thing I would curious about is, and I just have never had the time to dive into like analytical stuff, because I've never been just like full-time coach. That's all I had to do at most of my day. But I always wonder, like what we started off with, like these are the things that I believe in, and like we always have all done analytics. They just used to be called stats, and like we did them the way we did them, and they meant this or that. So like I'm not going to go crazy like what the word means, but I don't know, or always wonder if we pair up analytics with the film together better, because sometimes the numbers could say one thing. But like you shoot a certain percentage. None of us are ever going to shoot 100% in a game, for starters, right? So you could shoot maybe 44% in a game one time, but like you got all we can control as coaches is let's get the best shot for the guys in the right spot. So like Brian missed 6 shots that are good shots or good looks. So our analytics kind of like trend downward, like that. Like I think it doesn't seem like, or I always am curious, like how much are people just driven by the analytics And or maybe just driven by the film, because maybe that's not good either. Like, what's the about? How do people work those together? And not even like if one's telling you one and one's telling you another, which way do you go? But just in general, how does it like look as you build it out over the course of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think those, I definitely think those are, you got to factor all of those in. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
And it's those factors. It's personnel. It's a variety of different things. It's like, and part of what, and like I was talking to Jonah about this the other day, and like it's really interesting, Zach, that you like that article and like hear you talk about that, because like what I was talking to Jonah about, he's gonna be mad because I'm hijacking the conversation. It's defense now, but like defensively, like we gave up. We were last in our league last year in 3-point field goal attempts against.
Yep.
Okay. But like we led the country in fewest fouls per game. Like that's been a staple of our program. Like our
Division 1, 2, and 3, right?
D1, 2, and 3. Like,
oh wow.
We've
done that like 5 of the last 10 years, or
something close to that, like multiple times in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And so like there's a trade-off, right? There's a trade-off with everything. It's like, and so like I'm looking at it, I'm like, shit, like we're giving up all these threes, like, our points per against isn't as bad, like our percentage isn't as bad, but like just the sheer volume of attempts kind of scares me a little bit, just because that's kind of the way the game's going and like all those things. But like our free throw rate is obviously really good. We don't foul.
Yeah.
We don't turn teams over as much, but like all of it has to work together, right? With your scheme and like your personnel and like what gets you beat. Like what are the teams? I thought that was interesting in the article, going back to the article too, where it's different. Like having grown up in Texas a little bit, like it's a different style there. Like in the Big Ten, like it's different. Like in our league is a very similar style to the Big Ten in that, like, yes, we lead the country in fewest fouls per game, but you know what? Like 5 of the top 50 in the country are like in our league, and like 12 of the top 75 are in our like either our region or like they share the same officiating pool.
Right.
And
right.
Like it's a different style of game. And so it's like those all have to, like, to kind of Tommy, your question, like, I mean, there's so many factors that kind of go into that. And that's where it's hard, again, as a coach, is like, for me to go, okay, well, like, again, just isolate that one stat with like 3-point field goal defense, which is a big deal. Like, in my opinion, like, it's a big stat. It's an important stat. But like, how does everything fit together? Because if you do adjust that, like, and you do want to pressure more, and you do, like, there is going to be some give and take. Like, you might foul more, you might get some more turnover. Like, there could be some plus and minus, but like, we play 6 guys. Like,
right.
Now we got more guys in foul trouble. Like, how do those things continue to evolve? And like, when you play against the really, really good teams, and this goes back to your point too, Tommy, like, when I think about like everything, like tournament ready, like, I wouldn't necessarily say like in the tournament, I would say like it's geared towards like the best teams.
The best team, yeah.
Like what is, like, anybody can like we can pressure, we can do whatever against the bad teams, but like the best teams, like what's the stuff that works, and like what's proven over time to give yourself the best chance to work.
And I think also, to add on to that, like, sometimes what I think about is like, okay, how do I want to lose? So if I'm going to lose to this good team, it's because of X, Y, and Z. But at least, like in your case, next year, maybe at least we're not giving up as many threes attempted. Maybe we foul a little more. Maybe we gave up 2 more uncontested layups a game, but we cut down the 3-point attempts by 3, or whatever it is.
For sure.
When you say that, Jonah, the craziest thing that's ever happened to me really happened over the course of this last 2 years. Last year being at Bates, this year being here at Williams. And it happened last year when we were preparing to play Williams. There was no way in the world that we could have stopped them playing man-to-man. They would have scored 400 points on us. Like, our man-to-man defense was terrible, and their man-to-man offense was unbelievable, right? So literally that week, I'm saying to our coach, I'm like, we got to play zone. Now that's kind of nutty because they have great 3-point shooting. But the thing was, like, when you watch the film, I was like, well, that guy's not going to take – he can make threes. Don't get me wrong. He shoots at this clip. But he's not going to take enough shots. Like, we can leave him open. He's not used to shooting that many shots. He'll kind of freak out. He won't know what to do, So the game plays out, like, the first half, like, that was happening. And literally, like, I was talking smack to a couple of the kids. I was like, I know you can shoot it, but you ain't going to shoot, like stuff like that. So they adjusted. They just had too much talent and we lost, but like we stayed within the game. But now come full circle to this year, like I'm in these practices at Williams and I'm like, yep, we had the exact, like we really watched the film the right way because like they're like soldiers. They know their role and like they know like I'm going to get this shot. I'm going to get like I'm not supposed to do that. So even though it was like people were looking at us like if they knew all the dynamics, and some people did, like they get like, why are you letting that kid shoot? It's like, well, because that kid, if he gets 10 shots up, you know what I'm saying? Like, and just like little things like that. Defining, we were willing to go down with Henry, who I loved coaching this year. I even told him, I was like, Henry, last year this was the deal, but like we were willing to go down with him beating us because we couldn't stop and take away everything. You know what I mean? Like it was just impossible.
Well, and I think that's such a good point. Like I'm going to talk about that a little later. Like sometimes end of game, like you're going to lose the game, or the chance you're going to win is very, very small. And the best thing to do, I think, is like you just extend the game. And that's like the game within the game, but it's the same exact concept. Like you might not win playing zone, but you're going to lose playing man-to-man, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. Like we might not win this game, but the longer this game is going, the game's still going, so I have a chance to win it. And it's kind of the same mindset, I think.
It's like we can't overreact to a made basket. Like in football, like if the guy blows the coverage, they blow the cut. Like the coaches are like, "Yep, that was the right call," but the safety bit on something. The safety effed it up. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't like the wrong call. Like to your example with zone and man, guys, how many? I mean, like we watch enough basketball, and most people are playing man. How many threes are they making? They're making a lot of them. But if you switch the zone and somebody hits a couple threes, people are yelling, "Get out the zone!" This and that. No, just be better on defense. You know what I mean? Or if you can't do whatever on offense, like, like today's game, Ryan, how you said everybody's shooting threes. And Jonah, you can attest to this because, like, I'm not anti-3 at all. I'm not. But I'm anti if you can't make the three, shoot the three because the numbers say, your numbers are different. So I'd rather I'd rather have 2 points than 0 points. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it doesn't seem, so that's another one with like analytics, like the numbers have to be specific for the player. And going back to that used to be called stats. This guy shoots 45% from 3, hoist them up. This guy shoots 15%, pass, cut, take a couple steps in, do that,
I just got to notice that it was supposed to end after 40 minutes, but it said like it's not going to. So if it does, or if it gives me a notice, I'll let you guys know, but we'll just plan to go all the way through.
Do I have to sign another waiver for that? My waiver only said 40 minutes.
That's true. That's a good point.
My lawyer might come in here. That's called my wife.
Tell him to talk to my guy. So I'm just going to touch on like a bunch of different categories that I kind of consider special situations. And then I'll email all this stuff to you guys. So if you don't want to take notes, Tommy, I know we talked about it. Like everything in basketball, I took most of these ideas from everyone. So I'll try to give credit when I can. Obviously, sometimes you forget where you saw something. But it's just also a good way to say thank you to the coaches we've worked with, worked for, competed against, and watched from afar. Because the things like we don't directly poach or steal, we saw and then we tweaked it for our own liking. So none of us invented anything. Like I was even going to make a note about how Ryan, you took what Zach did and implemented it into your guys' postseason process. But that's what I think it's all about. All of these subtopics and scenarios, I think some of them depend on your, size of staff. Like these NBA staffs are ridiculous now. You got 25 people and everyone has a specialty. Obviously D3 is a lot smaller. D1 it's probably somewhere in between. But just a couple things to consider. Does your staff have a special teams coordinator or someone that's their sole responsibility or one of their few responsibilities? And Ryan, you talked about this next one a little bit, but are you spending enough time preparing for situational basketball? Obviously, I'm a big Patriots fan. It's been a hard week for us. But Belichick talks all the time. I don't know. Some guy left, I think.
There was a Giants Patriots Super Bowl on last night.
I knew he was going to bring up the Giants.
I didn't know what team you rooted for. I'm sorry.
You're very predictable. I got you scouted.
Listen, what Ryan brought up, I totally agree, and I think I'm going to see what he's thinking about that. And that's something we always all are talking about, situations. Let's get him in practice. But we never practice them. We don't practice them enough. It should be a segment. Guess what? In football, there's always a 4th and 1, short yardage. Yeah. There's this, there's that.
Goal line, whatever. Goal line defense.
All the time. Situations.
Yeah.
I don't understand how we don't think, enough of us as basketball coaches don't think that that's important enough to work on,
Yeah. And I know Zach, I'm sure you might touch on this later.
Most of the deal.
So I'll let you take that one. I think another question to ask is, what % of your games were 2-possession games? And what was your record in those games? With the Kings this year, we're really bad. We were 4-13 maybe in one games, I think decided by 3 or 4 points or less. My thing, though, is we were in those games, and some of those games we shouldn't have been in, so it's not always a fair stat. But in those close games, did you feel prepared as a coach? What were you not prepared for? And, there isn't I don't think that's limited just to end the game. For the NBA, the big change this year was the challenge rule. And watching a lot of games, I think some coaches had it down well. They had a good process of maybe even having a computer behind the bench and having instant replay, for lack of a better phrase, to know if they should challenge the call or not. But not every team did. So, again, there's different things in different leagues, but were you prepared for those situations? And you as a coach and then the team, were they confident in the actions? Did they feel prepared? Couple other questions to ask yourself is just, how did teams in your league win close games? And then how did teams in your league lose close games? I think you could find this information pretty quickly, especially after the year. And maybe you just watch the last 3 minutes of those close games and you'll probably be able to learn something. And then what are you learning from across your league and across different leagues? I am going to share my screen again.
How about, to add to that, what do you learn from other sports?
Absolutely. I think that's a great one. I remember this happened a couple of years ago. The Suns were down and there was 0.6 seconds left. And this is just a clip of Jay Triano talking.
It's a rule that a lot of people don't know.
Can you guys hear that?
If you knock goaltend the ball, that isn't going to count. So I tell our guys, shoot the ball in the basket. And all Tyson has to do is touch it on the way down. Or have it grab the rim and have it hit your knuckle and go in. And I asked the officials when they come and do their clinics and seminars with the coaches, I asked them that 15 years ago when I was in Toronto. And I said, I'm trying to, and they had to go back and look at it and come back with, and I've tried to keep it a secret. It's not a secret anymore.
But, that just came to mind. And we showed that clip to our team with the Lakers that year, and we talked about it. So, again, you can use it for you offensively, but if they use it offensively, you might see it defensively. So I think talking about those things that you see, another one, and a lot of teams are doing this now. I know George Karl did this with the Nuggets a long time ago. Zach, I know we've talked about this. I saw it in Northern Kentucky this year, but just starting football plays from the baseline. Mm-hmm. So, again, either you can use that or if you're not going to use it, chances are someone's going to use it against you. So showing that, talking about it just with your staff. The team doesn't need to know everything, but as a staff, do you have a plan to play against that?
Plus, Jonah, it might be, and maybe it isn't even different at the pros. I know with college kids, if you put in something like that, or there's enough unique things that have happened over the lifetime of basketball that if you picked one or 2 or whatever you have per week, it keeps them engaged. It keeps it fresh. You know, like they're excited to like that kind of stuff or whatever. I'm sure that actually would probably be the same with you in the pros and like
Absolutely.
a game day shoot around, you know, because it's different. Your practices are different and stuff, but like a game day shoot around, not to just go through the, like, what if you always had a wacky play or something, you know, something, a rules question or something that just gets people engaged again.
Like,
I don't think that ever can hurt.
Yeah, and like how many of your kids at Williams are like, you know, like De'Aaron Fox was a quarterback, right? So like how many kids at Carleton or Williams or Illinois played football in high school? So you make it a little more familiar for them in those terms. Obviously, I think sometimes we all look like geniuses and we all look like dumbasses, but it's like learning from both, and it's learning from yourself. It's learning when you beat someone on you know, we lost this year in Miami. We should have won, and we switched, and we didn't have a big in the game. They get a lob to Bam Adebayo, and Tommy,
I couldn't text you fast enough. I couldn't text you fast enough that night. Then Corey Joseph. Corey Joseph. I was like, oh my God.
But again, you know, we had a 4-point play and we had a chance to win other games. You know, we win on a buzzer beater in Houston. So are you learning from the good and the bad? And are you learning from others? You know, at Illinois, are you guys watching us do that and being like, all right, when we're in this situation, that's not going to happen to us.
You know what, Jonah, just to add to that, all of this stuff, this is where I'm definitely at fault. When we start to collect and learn all this stuff, where do we keep it? So that we have it to refer to, like in the timeout or in between games, you know, because I mean, my phone has zillions of notes in it, but I never take the time to try, you know, to really try to have it organized. It would take me a year. But by that time, the next season would be gone. You know what I mean? Like I have it here, but it's, you know what I mean?
My answer is I'll get there in a couple of minutes.
He's going to tell us about this new app he has with the password app. That's
you got to sign a waiver to see that. So, some other things to consider. And Tommy, you just talked about this. Zach, you'll talk about this a lot. But are you practicing these situations enough? And when are you practicing them? Is it random? Is it planned? Is it by format? Does the team know that every day at this time we're going to do a special situation segment? Does the coach know it's coming? Is it every day, every other day? Is it shoot around like you talked about, Tommy? I don't think it matters. You just have to feel good about your process of why you're doing things like that. And then when and how are you teaching these concepts? You know, I think especially early in the season, we always have about 2 weeks for training camp, 2 or 3 weeks with some exhibition games, and it gets pretty monotonous. And with I don't want to fire you up too much, Tommy, but with the player load stuff, you know, some of these practices are low intensity. So I think those days it might even be a walkthrough thing in college. Those are great opportunities to teach a jump ball or a free throw box out. And you can do it, if you're organized and efficient, you can do it in 5 or 10 minutes. But that's going to save you a basket or get you a basket at some point in that season, which can impact the game.
Well, you know what? How about this one? Just to add to the situation list, I always wondered this, and because I had a team that was so bad at halftime, we started practicing. Like, we always have a plan for the start of the game and the warm up and everything, but like, how many times do we practice halftime? You know, like guys sit down for 15 minutes, you go downstairs. I actually saw something not too long ago. I got to find it where they talked about the amount of time needed to warm somebody back up again. Yeah. And I literally would, you know, like we just evaluate the first half of practice, stop it. And like, coach, what are we doing? I was like, you guys suck coming out of the half. So we're going to start practicing. We're going to re-warm up. We're going to try to do like whatever to try to get, because like that's a segment of the game. You know, the middle 8, the middle 10, however you want to count it, the first 4, last 4, first 4, last 5, first 5, where you can, so that it won't have to come down to the last 3 minutes. You know what I mean? Because sometimes we could lose the game right there, you know?
And I'll raise you even like taking timeouts during practice. Like instead of just a water break, let's, you know, we have different length timeouts. I don't know what your guys' length timeouts
You have some BS timeouts. We'll call a timeout in college. You got a minute. The rest of us, you're out there in 30 seconds. You guys can go talk to Doris Burke, everything, and you still got a 2-minute timeout. What kind of nonsense is that?
No comment. I'm going to just fly through some different scenarios, and then we'll move it on. First thing is jump ball And I just have a diagram on one end. I think in college, you have one in the start of the game, and then the only other one would be the start of every overtime game, overtime segment. But obviously in the NBA, there's more, and they can be here. But we talk about the pocket or the cup. So it's the one place that there's no defender between the two offensive players.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can win this, we want to hit it there for sure control. And that can be start of the game. That can be, any jump ball here. Again, bringing back to my Patriots, they made a big deal of this the last 20 years. And I know Cheryl Reeve with the Minnesota Lynx likes doing this as well. But if you lose the jump ball in the NBA professional, you get the ball at the start of the second and third periods. So it would be the equivalent if you get the ball at the start of the second half for college. And if you can get the possession at the end of the second quarter and the end of the third quarter, you actually get more possessions in the game doing it that way. So, again, it's up to you. It's just your preference. But if you're confident holding for 2-for-1s or the last shot and you're good at that, that's something to consider. The flip side is like if you get an offensive tip to start the game, especially maybe you're on the road, a hostile environment, if you get a dunk or you get an open three-pointer, will that give your team some confidence going into the rest of the game? Just something to consider.
Hey, how many NBA teams have a tip play? Are they just, I would say the vast majority are just trying to tip it to get into their first call?
I'm about to show you a couple.
Because I'll tell you one thing, the Lakers, have you seen what the Lakers have been running this year to get McGee that dunk?
Yeah, we've been doing that long before.
I'm just saying that thing, it didn't, hold on, it wasn't working like that last year though, I don't think. I watched a lot of
preseason, San Diego.
Okay, send me the clip, all right?
Man, we were doing that with
San Diego.
We were doing that with Pokey for Sylvia Fowles.
Fowles.
She was doing it. She was doing it in Russia 10 years ago. So yeah,
it just caught me off guard. Like because they've been so successful with it, like I remember that used to be a thing. You used to have a tip play. You try to come out, try to do something. But I've noticed them. Maybe if you got your center to play, maybe if you got Bagley healthy, you could run the tip play.
Yeah, my God. So this is what you're talking about. He rips it. He tips back, and 2 rips him. Another way you can get into this is just passing it ahead. So, oops. I don't know how to. Here we go. But you can tip it to the 4, and then that would be LeBron for the Lakers, and then he rips it. So same exact concept. And with those, among some other things I'll talk about later, I think it's really good to run those plays the first time you play a team, and especially if you play a team not in non-conference. I know you guys have most of your schedule is conference, but if you guys have the Big Ten ACC Challenge, they scout you and they're going to talk to other teams in your conference to get your stuff, but they're not watching all those games, and no one does. So I think that's a little trick that versus these other teams, you can steal some possessions. A couple little tricks on the jump ball. Like if this is me and this is the other guy's hand, when you're coming up, you can sometimes hit his hand a little bit. These aren't all essentially legal, but I'm gonna get why. So that's one good one.
Could they call a foul on that? Could they technically call a foul? I know they probably
it's a violation, but
okay.
The other thing, the other thing, like I think these are all good if it's Nate Robinson versus Yao Ming, and he did the one right when the ref throws the ball, he just jumps and gets it on the way up. And here's the thing: if they call a violation for any of these that I'm talking about, great, we can run back and set our defense. Where if Yao Ming taps it out, now they have a transition opportunity. So then the third one, so you can tap the hand on the way up, you can jump right when the ball is being released by the ref. Then the other one, just imagine X3 tip the ball back here, is you're not allowed to run through this circle, but you can just intercept it like that. That's something you can explore, and that's again not legal. Refs rarely call a violation. So it's another way to either steal possession or at least set your defense in a disadvantaged situation. So those tip plays we talked about, Yeah, I mean, I was going to give credit to Pokey and Sylvia, but I was also going to give love to your Lakers.
I'm not a Laker fan. You're
I
not there anymore. I know. I just happened to see them like back-to-back games, I think,
Yeah.
run it, and I was like,
Yeah.
whoa! I didn't, caught me
Yeah.
off guard.
Moving on
As
to
long as,
yeah.
no, I didn't say anything. Yeah.
Moving on to free throws. I know in college you guys have this other, fourth defensive player there, but a lot of these things I think could just be adjusted a little bit. So in the NBA, what we always teach is you have the two side versus the best offensive rebounder, and then whether this is X1 or X2, they pinch with the one side, and then the other guy gets the shooter. So again, in college, I think this guy normally just comes there, and I don't know what you guys do with this fifth guy, but I think either getting him to help box out the shooter or maybe starting that little shallow U cut, if that's the point guard, to get some momentum going into offense. Just pinching this offensive rebounder, they can spin and all of that. We'll get into some tricks here. Another thing the Lakers did, and they were doing this for Anthony Davis in New Orleans, but they just called it push, is 4 would outlet to 1, if you can imagine, in the backcourt, and 5's already waiting down there. And the first look is this spin out. 2 might come off this pin down, but 1 is just going to throw. 2 can either hold in that corner or throw, or 1 can throw to 5 spinning out to the rim. So it's just a nice little wrinkle. And they had all these different options out of it. They had a bunch more options out of it. And this doesn't have to be the 5. This is just a nice way to kind of throw something else at the defense. Portland was doing this more last year, a little bit this year, but they were just taking the ball out and they put their 2 wings down, either in the short corner or corner, and then they were getting into their pistol actions, their motion down, their delay action stuff. So again, I just think you're throwing something else at the defense, and maybe you can steal some possessions. This is another one we did in LA, especially times we were playing a team from the Eastern Conference. We just called it Oscar. But on the shot, 4 is taking the ball out and 1's just running deep. And then your 2 and 3 can either pinch there or they can just pinch the defensive perimeter guys. And what we would do there, especially like if a timeout was coming, we would just call the timeout in between the first and second shot, or if it was an and 1, call the timeout, draw that up real quick. Again, none of that's revolutionary, but just a little different look.
Well, also, Jonah, at the college level, I mean, definitely our levels. And actually now, Ryan, you guys have Synergy? Do you use Synergy?
Yep. I'm actually logging onto it right now. Yeah,
I think most of us now have that, but you would be surprised like how much like that stuff I think you should really be like scouting and looking for, like those kind of plays that don't. I'll give you a perfect example. Last year, I'm watching Amherst play Nichols.
Yep.
And Nichols beat him, but Amherst has the ball underneath out of bounds. They run this play, right? They got to look. The kid missed it, right? So I clipped, I said, man, that was a good play, whatever. This year, Williams, was it at Amherst? I think it was at Amherst, whichever time we played them. Baseline out of bounds. Now, different coach, it's Toomey in for Hickson, you know what I mean? But what's he going to run? Bang, the same damn play. Like, to me, it's like, and I can't remember, I was not there every day with our guys, so I'm not saying they didn't do that, but I knew what was coming. Like, I was like, they're going to run this. Because they didn't run it. That's not their normal inbounds play.
Yeah.
They had different stuff, but that was their Oscar or whatever you want to call it. Like, and that's something you only have to see one time, then coming out of the timeout. Remember when you were saying that the players don't have to know everything, but now here, hey, fellas, look for this real quick. And then they bring it back even further if you've practiced timeouts. You know what I mean? Because like maybe you're going to practice a late game timeout, show the guys, hey, this is coming on they're going to run this because and see how they react. Like it all builds up to getting a win, or taking a loss. you
Yeah.
know?
And I think, like, I've studied the end of game situations for the last couple of years in the NBA, and you'd be surprised at how many coaches either run the same thing. I'll get into some of that a little later, but like, coaches are creatures of habits, probably more than as much, if not more than players. So I think making note of that, and I'll get into different alignments and why I think that's important in a little bit. But this, Ryan, I know we've talked about this before. I think you call it UNC maybe, or something with North Carolina.
Yeah, dad tap. We call it dad tap.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw Utah do this last year at end of game situation, but this 3-man, this would be your best kind of flyer in offensive rebounder. This would be quick guy, bigger guy. So 5's just burying this box out guy, and then he's coming right off his ass right to the rim. And 2, you're going in there too. So when you're down in games, again, offensively, it's something to think about, and then defensively, how are you counteracting that? Excuse me. I had to give my guy Fox some love. Ryan, you were obviously at this game. But the other thing when you're down late is, especially with like 4 or 5 seconds left, is the intentional miss. With that, I just think it's important to know, are you going to shoot it right when the ref gives you the ball or bounces you the ball? Are you going to shoot it in the middle of your routine? Or are you going to go for the high arch and miss for a long rebound? Again, it doesn't matter. It's just your preference. Fox is obviously really quick there, which
That's
helps.
what we're calling that, really quick.
Yeah, it looked like a free throw violation.
Came out the next day said it's a violation. I don't.
Exactly.
If they don't call it, it's not a violation. That's all I can say.
That's right.
No doubt.
You know what I wonder too is, I've always said this to myself on the flip end. You know how people are always talking about, if you're you're up 3, take the foul, they make the first, and then you could do the free throw violation from a defensive standpoint. Is that, first of all, I would, and I need to talk to a ref because I haven't talked to him for a while about it. But like, number one, are they really gonna, how you can keep doing that? I don't know if they fixed the rule where like now you can only do it a certain amount of times. So like after I do that, let's say 7, however many times, because if they kept missing, am I going to get a delay game? Am I going to get a technical? There's all that stuff. But also, I would want my player to literally either line up in the paint before the guy even gets the ball, so that Fox doesn't get it up quickly. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Or what's the contingency plan for making? Because you might try to step in. The ref may not. You never know what can happen.
Absolutely. And I just think every year, especially those athletic guards, these guys on the perimeter, I think you have to give really special attention to. Because end of game or not, again, it's a simple thing, but are we boxing these guys out and they're flying in? That's Derrick Rose in his prime. That's 2 points. And if we can get a body on him, maybe it's not. Then the last thing with free throws just to think about is what you're doing on a made or even missed free throw defensively. So, I think it's a good time to extend your pressure, whether it's an aggressive trapping zone. A lot of teams just have a soft press just to take some time off the shot clock and add some uncomfortable pressure to the offense. I'm just going to move into some ATO concepts now. I think a lot of you guys know most of these. Stack action, you can do whatever you want with the guys in the corner, but on this mid pick and roll, this shooter is screening the pick and roll screener's defender. And you can do 2 things. 5, normally 2 is setting this back screen. 5 is rolling and 2 is popping. The other thing you can do is 5 can set a down screen for 2 coming back up. The first guy I've heard that kind of started this was Sergio Scariola, who's the Spanish national team coach, and he's an assistant with Toronto. Monty Williams was doing this in New Orleans a lot with 2 bigs. So you can play around with it. Here's a clip of Charlotte doing it.
129 all. And we're quickly down to 140 left in overtime. Graham, open again. Just another.
But I think all of these, play around with it. Like I said, Monty Williams would have 2 bigs in it. That changes it a little bit. Kersh, what if you guys had, your 3, Kent from this year handling that? Are they going to switch? Are they going to triple switch? It just can cause some confusion. Miami does it a lot with your boy Duncan, Tommy, where they clear it out. So they do it in the slot here, and there's no one in the strong side corner. So again, it just changes the defensive rotations with that. You guys all know I love a good hammer action. This is Toronto's. They run once or twice a game, most games. I think it's important to notice with it a couple things. So
Nuggets by 12. Nuggets once again beat the Raptors twice last year. A wide open 3 Nuggets.
The one thing, it's the hammer is really the baseline drive, baseline drift. You can do it out of a post up. They do it out of a hit and follow right here. What I love about this is they vacate the weak side corner, which really puts a lot of strain on your help defense. So Toronto actually ran this against us in Toronto this year and early in the year, and Lowry gets a layup because there's no help side coming. So again, you can play around, get into that a lot of different ways. But I like vacating that weak side corner, and you should tell this guy the two things: you're going for a dunk, really, and if not, you might have to sell out, which he does a really good job of. And he's making that pass from out of bounds, leaving his feet. Like we always tell our guys, if you're here flat-footed making that pass, it's not getting off. So you just have to leave your feet and really sell out to make that pass. This is another play Zach and I have talked about a lot. I think Fred Hoiberg brought it to the NBA. Again, that's the first guy I saw really doing it, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. He called it 5-flat special. So it's this kind of slot angle pick and roll with the weak side guy in the corner. And he can start in the corner. He can start in the block. It's just your preference. Setting this back screen as this ball screen's happening. And then 5 is slipping it to set this little quick right there. Let's watch the video of it.
Orlando. Using a Vucevic screen. Good look for Evan Fournier. No one near it.
Just a couple notes with that. I think it's a big timing play. So
For sure.
as this screen is happening, you want this screen to be happening. And then when you're putting this play in or you're talking about it, you're trying to tell this point guard to go act like he's going to score a basket, going to dunk the ball. You want to put so much pressure on Alex Len that he has to respect the drive. And then 5, if you set a good screen right here on your shooter, he really has a lot of time. And this is, exaggerated. Alex Len's in that deeper drop. But even if you're at the level, I think if the point guard turns the corner, it can really help the shooter coming off. Another thing is this screen right here, you can change the angle, and that could be a lob look, or he can go to the corner. If it's a lob look, you probably want to hold this guy in the corner. So, that strong side corner guy can either stay or he can clear out.
Using a Vucevic screen. Good look for Evan Fournier. No one near it.
I know he misses that shot, but I think it's a really good timing with it. Here's Phoenix doing it a little differently.
Jake Free drops it off to Saric, who gets the bump.
So again, we can watch it one more time. And I would say Tyler Johnson doesn't get downhill enough with the ball. Like if he was right there right now, and if this screen was set a little wider, we probably want him coming off for a 3. But even so, Jokic doesn't have to help that much because Johnson isn't a threat right here. So just think about that for your point guard.
Drops it off to Saric, who gets the bump.
And like all these, they're just base ideas and actions. I drew this up this year randomly. Maybe someone's random before, I'm not sure. I know it looks confusing, but 2 comes off this Iverson and curls it. As 3's getting out. 1 hits in 5 and then comes off for a little toss, touchback. And now we're just into the action. 2 sets that rip for 4. 5 is setting that follow for 2, and 1's turning the corner. So a
You
lot
could
of
sell
different.
that. You could sell that one to Carlisle, man. That looks like, you know how they get Don. No, seriously, they get Doncic open on
They're two
the.
housekeepers. Yep.
Yeah, that would be. They don't have that.
Yeah, you sell it to
No.
them, but make them sign the waiver.
I'll send them to your lawyer.
Perfect. Next, I just want to talk about split cuts real quick. Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
so
I'm flying
this
through.
is what. So again, going back to like football, like I think where like we can also. I think we're doing a better job as basketball coaches of it, of not like tipping our hand on what's coming. Like I think we're really working more towards like everything looks the same until bang, it's different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I still think probably a lot of we're not doing that. You know, like why is that? Like why? Like when I see something like that, I think like how can I get the action to fit within my, like, you know, when will we break it off to get to like that action, you know? And I don't know
Yeah.
if that's trending more in hoops, you know, or not, but
I'm going to talk about that in like right after I talk about
my
this.
fault. Hey folks, I don't have his notes. I promise you. I don't have his notes.
But I think it's a really good question. And it's at the end of the day, like everything, it's up to the coach's perspective and point of view. But I think having families that guys are comfortable with, like if I say chin and Zach, you're the 5, you know you're on the right elbow. Like it's no ifs, ands, and buts. And Kershaw, you're the 3, you know you're in the right corner, right? Like, and that's your family. Because like in football, right, if you're in this package or, you know, whatever family package formation, doesn't matter. You know, as a middle linebacker, you're here. And now we can manipulate it doing X, Y, and Z. So I totally agree. I think having families and then tweaking them just gives you a lot of different ways to – then you have a system that you can manipulate. If you don't have anything, it's hard to manipulate it. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Just split cuts, and there's a lot of different ways to get into all of them. You know, back in like the 2008 Celtics championship team, they would do a lot the jet cut. So Rondo would punch it into KG, and he would go on the baseline side, and it would be late, usually over his shoulder for that late pass little finish. Then when Steve Kerr came in with the Warriors, their big thing was just regular split cuts. So on this pass, either the passer was setting the screen or he was getting the screen. And the big thing with this was split cuts. And if one of these is a good shooter, it's hard. If 2 of them are good shooters, it's really hard. You know, that's Steph and Clay. It's just hard action to guard. So that was really like the next evolution, I think, in the last 10 or so years of split cuts. And the big thing with these are slips. Teams are, you know, that's your best shooter flying off. Teams are overreacting to it. Screener thinks slip. And there's a lot of good 3-man drills, you know, you can do with the split cuts. This right here is Zach's maybe favorite play of all time. Bilbao action, which I think Quinn Snyder really made big in the NBA.
I was gonna say, yep. I saw Joe Ingles right already when that came up. I was like, I see Joe Ingles. You know.
Yeah. So on this pass, 5 is setting a flare for 3, and then 1 can either curl to the rim, curl and set another screen, and then 5's bringing 3 back. So again, there's a lot of different ways to manipulate it. I don't know what the next evolution is with this. I think I've talked to you guys a lot about that. I honestly think it might just be hold. Like with the excess of shooting on the court, you know, the number one reason I think you do split cuts is it lets the guy with the ball go to work. It occupies the dig guy. It occupies some of the help defense when you're moving those guys around. So sometimes if you just hold and you have a mismatch in the post, that's a good opportunity for that.
Hey Jonah, for that, go watch the back-to-back Rockets championship teams. Because guess what? They had Olajuwon and they had shooting. Exactly. And what could you do? if you didn't double Olajuwon, he was going to give you the business. And if you came off any of those shoots, they would just freeze. You know what I mean? They didn't have to do that. That's literally, it would be the weirdest thing because it would be going back to like, you know, back to the future, basically, you know?
Yeah. This is what the Lithuanian national team was doing, this action. And you can get into it different ways, but this is just a little pistol, you know, hit and follow. And once we're in the post, 5 flares that 2-man. And, you know, we had a hammer on the weak side, doesn't matter. And then 5 screens 3 to the ball. And then 5 pins 2 back to the top. So 3 kind of continues to that strong side corner. And again, normally when this guy curls off of 5's flare right there, he's out of the play or he goes to the weak side. So this is a nice way to bring him back into the play. This, I know, Ryan, you guys normally have some good shooting bigs. This next one, the Angola national team was running this summer. So it's really, you know, it's some bogus stuff to start it off, but they ran the stagger away. 3 came off the stagger, and then 4 pops to the ball, and then 4 DHOs to 3, and he's the one getting the flare. And then they get into some split cuts.
Pointer number 9 in this game.
Well, third 3 for Jokic, and again, just can't let them shoot the ball from the perimeter.
So again, the defense was switching right there.
There's a low post move. 1-on-1 action. Moreira.
The defense was switching there, but I think it's a really good action having the guy that gives the DHO come off a flare. We've been doing it out of chin this year for Belitia, and you know, just out of a little chin action, he passes, cuts off 5, 2 spaces up, 5 pins for 3, 4 DHOs to him, and then comes off a flare from 5. And again, with shooting bigs, it puts those big defenders that aren't maybe used to switching 4 or 5. You know, Bates Diop, a second or third year guy now, and he gets really lost on that action.
Hey, Jonah, with that, if the flare's not there, do you just go into a ball screen there? What's the kids with you?
That's your 3-man right there with the ball, right? So if that's not open, I think you can either DHO to this guy and he can slash cut through, or turn around into the mid pick and roll. I think both are viable options.
You guys, not like, you know, Luke's not on here, none of your guys, but like seriously, man, you guys have been running some good stuff. ATOs, you really have. Like I got like 15, 16 things. A lot. You got a lot of variety too, and you get a lot of good shots. You know.
That's what you call it, Igor Kokoshkov.
Yeah, whoever it is.
Give the man a raise.
No, he's done a good job. I mean, you've run some really good stuff coming out of like any kind of timeout or even dead ball situation.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about this. I kind of like think NBA wise, you always see it like where like the first play of the game, the coach, you know, like we're gonna run this. The play you could see like this, bang, 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 and then like, you know, it could kind of just go like forever without a play. And I don't get me wrong, I get like the pace of the game and these things and up and down, but like, you know, some of these coaches are so good. Like, why are there not more like? I don't want to just say like plays, but like families of plays or systems. Like you could tell me if I'm wrong. Like you could split it, maybe not down in half, but there's a group like who runs stuff, and then there's a group who like, you know. And I know some of it's talent oriented, or like why is that? Or
who runs the league?
The players.
That's your answer. Like Luka Doncic is a hell of a player. Rick Carlisle's a hell of a coach, but who's gonna win long term there? It's going to be Luka, you know, and like the only place maybe is San Antonio, maybe Miami. You know, LeBron left and Spo kind of won that, but I think, you know, the word in Dallas is that Luka wants, you know, Carlisle motherfucks Luka for throwing a behind the back pass, and the next possession down he throws a behind the back pass for an assist. It's like that's how he wants to play. So now I think it should be somewhere in the middle. But the players have to be happy, or else the coach is out of a job.
Of course. Yeah,
So,
of course. I mean, I
don't. You
get
guys
that.
might
Yeah.
have different ideas on that. I think it's as simple.
No,
as
it's the reality. It's the reality. You know, it's different in college where the coach can say, you know what,
Oh,
I'm
college.
going to the transfer portal. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? You know, yeah.
I think
But,
with teams going smaller, it's what's Houston Rocket like? What plays do they run now? It's not a play.
yeah, they don't. I mean,
But
like, yeah.
my point is, it's spacing, and
Yep.
anyone can be in the corner if you can make a corner catch and shoot three, and it's going to be ISO or pick and roll, spread pick and roll, and
I get that their talent like determines that works for them, or so they think. You know what I mean? Like I get that. It's just like it's crazy because like you just see like stuff. It's like not that obviously you can't run that all the time, but you could build off that because like. And you watch these NBA games today, like everybody could talk about the offense. There's a lot of bad shots too. You know what I mean? A lot of bad offense that's happening. Where like if there was a set, let's run this or let's get into this. Maybe you're going to get a better shot, and maybe you get a better shot, you got a chance of making it, you know?
Yeah.
But do you feel like that's even in your time or when you talk to other guys, like that I don't know if it's a gap, but the difference between like the coachability of the players, you know, like it is widening or different or has it always just been that way and maybe it's just a different type of player or I don't know.
Players might be talking more, but like I don't even think about it that way. I think it's on us as coaches to adjust to your players, to the talent. And it doesn't matter if it's the same or different. You just have to be able to connect. You know, what's Coach K always talk about? Like you have to be able to adapt. So can you text your players? Like at a certain point, there weren't cell phones. And at a certain point, you're not good with technology, right? And I just think that it's not even about like I think there's a huge gap. I used to talk about this with Brian Shaw all the time. Like if I said get into Memphis action, everyone on the team right now would look at me like I had two heads. But if you said that 15 years ago, they would know what to do. But that's not like I never think that's the player's fault. It's not. That's the product of the AAU culture, the one and done, how the league is running through players quicker and just experimenting with young guys, G League up and down. Like I don't blame that on the players at all.
So how would you build like, culture? Like, so like, for example, everybody wants to talk about the Spurs, this and that. Has anybody noticed the Spurs aren't good now they don't have good players? That's not to not pop for better or worse. Like, but you need, they always acted like the Spurs didn't have talent, like, or like, but that's not the case. But how can you create, like, obviously, like you said, Miami's a perfect example. If you don't do it their way, they just get rid of you, or you can't be there, but like.
Deion Waiters was healthy this year. He wasn't playing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and Pat Riley has enough sweat equity, like, there's not going to be another one of the, like that's a whole different ball game. But like, how do we go about, creating that where like we could actually coach somebody,
Yeah. I think Jonah, the point you made, like in what Brian Shaw had said, like I think that's spot on. Like to answer, I guess the question I think is like the culture that you're going to create is going to be different. It's going to look different than what the Spurs did. Like the Spurs are doing it, like all the teams now, like everybody, all they're trying to do is cater to their players. Like it's so much about players and like
the arms race. Who has the best massages? Who has the best practice facilities?
Every facet that can be thought of, like the family lounge and like everything, right? Like all those things. And like, so I think about it again in college, like there's way less continuity, like in college, like one and done, all the things you talk about, transfers, like 450 transfers right now, like wait another month and what that's going to look like. It's AAU, like it's what it's turned into, where it's like when you're 15, you play with a team and like you might play with that team again next year, but if another team and a better offer comes along, you're going to entertain that. It's the same exact thing with college now. Like you go to, this is probably a bad example, but like Loyola Chicago. Like, that's the best offer you had coming out. Like, okay, fine. Like, that's like a good, like, mid-level AAU team. And then you have a really good year there. And now what? Like, the shoe sponsor team wants you. Okay. So now what? Illinois wants you, and Michigan State wants you. You have a good year there. And so, like, and that's permeated to the NBA now too, where it's like, no, I mean, where it hasn't really is Division III, but to the point about like there's such a lack of stability across the board. The players are running the league, so it's like 1 year. Kawhi signs a 2-year contract because why? Because he can. Like, give me fucking freedom to go. I don't care. Like, I can go wherever I want. And so, like, as coaches, like, that's what it has. My impression is that's what's happening in the NBA is like they have adapted to that, and they're trying to be as player centered as focused. Where 20 years ago it wasn't that way. Like, same at college. Like Coach K, like there's way less, like, in general terms, I would say, like, hard ass coaches. Like, there are still some, but like way less now than there was at the Division I level. Like, there's more, like, because there's a risk that you're gonna lose the guys. Like, you're gonna lose them. Like. And so I think that's, I don't know if that, like, in some roundabout way kind of answers that kind of culture question.
No, it definitely does. Yeah. I mean, for me, I think I agree with you, Ryan. And that's probably why, like, I want to stay at D3. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like, like I couldn't, like, survive. I don't think anybody who's ever played for me, like, I get on people, but they know. Well, I mean, you, Jonah, you played. Like, I think you've witnessed me coach enough games. Like, I build up, like, they know I care about it, and all of them. They know I want to challenge them to be the best that they can be, and that's all you guys in the NBA want to do too. But it's like, or even the high level D1, but it's received so poorly. Like, I mean, and we can get, this might be a whole video conference, another edition. Like, where does that start from? How can we fix it? Obviously, we've mentioned AAU, and even before that, grassroots. It just seems so wrong on so many levels.
Like, the two things I'll say is, like, think about how vocal fathers have been the past 3 years in the NBA. I'm not going to name names, but some have been very close with the teams I've been with, Yeah. And
I thought he traveled on your team plane. I thought he was on the flight, but you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
But again, like, the voice that those people have, social media, the voice that players have, I think that's a huge element of it. And then like, how I would answer your question is nothing's bigger or better than human connection. Like, even bad people like human connection. And it's interesting, but like, now it's such unprecedented times. But like, I think, and Kersh and I talked about this a couple nights ago, but like a couple days ago, but how are you keeping in touch with your players is huge. And like, we'll see if we play again in a couple weeks, in a month, in 2 months. But I think we'll see the teams that have kind of stuck together, player to player communication, coach to player communication, and maybe who hasn't. I just think that, and there's tons of ways. Like, I think for a head coach in the NBA, the conversations you have not about basketball are probably more important than the conversations you do have about basketball. And it might even be more important in college.
No doubt. And we've talked about it, Jonah, how irritated we get that NBA coaches don't high five their players when they're coming out of the game. It's like little things like that can make a difference. Another thing that I know that Jonah and I have talked extensively about is what Chris Beard does at Texas Tech. It's one of my favorite things that a coach does. He's known to be tough on his guys, tough guy to play for. But every morning he goes into his office and he's got a Post-it note with the name of every player on his team on the Post-it note every day. So I think his assistant might make them, and has one for the year. And that sits on his desk, and when he has a conversation with that kid, he crosses that name off. And his goal is to get through that entire list every single day. And that's how you can continue to coach guys hard. I mean, Coach Underwood is very much old school and in your face, and but it's having relationships with these guys that can keep it. The biggest thing that we do is we practice in the mornings so that we can all have breakfast as a team after practice. So we get done with practice, and instead of guys going to their lockers and sulking and, saying, "Oh, coach is on one today. Like he, I can't deal with him anymore." But we're all in there eating breakfast together, joking around, messing around as a family. That's something that we've done that's made a big difference to our culture and allowing us to coach these guys pretty hard.
So Jonah, like, not to go too far off of the special situations, but like when you, and I'll just stick with you, for example, or like even all of us, because what do we always say when someone asks you, like, why do you coach or why do you want to coach? Like, we need to add probably to that, why do we want to coach at whatever that level is? You know what I'm saying? So
Yep.
like why, if someone asked you that, like, why would you want to coach in the NBA? Like, what would you say? Because I know, like, I've read, we probably all read your stuff that you put together, and like, not that can't work in the NBA, because it should be able to. You know what I'm saying? But you'd have to have the right situation. You'd have to have all these things, but like, it probably could work easier in college, for example, or like whatever. Like, how are you going to try to blend that in when you need a certain level of talent in order to keep winning, to keep your job anyway? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to blend those two worlds?
I would say it's about the adapting. So what are players going to be like in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? I don't know. But seeing how those trends go, and then surrounding yourself with the right people around you. So again, former players, I think, are really good there. Guys that have been former head coaches and have dealt with that before. Because I'm the first, and Ryan and I've talked about this with all of you guys. Like, I haven't been a head coach. So if and when I get that opportunity, I'm going to want someone that has been, or more than one person, just to help me through that. And I think for me, like, the big reason I want to be in the professionals is I don't want to recruit. I think I could enjoy it and I think I could get behind it, but I'd rather be in the gym. And like, that's just my preference. And like, I don't want to limit to hourly, I can only practice this much in season and out of season. But like I've always said, if I wasn't in the pros, I would probably be in Division III. If someone comes and offers me a lot of money, we'll see. But
that doesn't exist in Division III, so don't worry about that.
I mean, for Division I, but like, I think growing up in a place like Amherst, like, like we go up and you go to LaFrac. Like, Amherst College is your biggest thing in the world. They're better than UMass. And then going to a place like Carleton, like a high academic institution like that, I think. And Ryan, and we talk about this a lot, but like the Ryan's teams at Carleton College are maybe older, but definitely have a higher emotional intelligence than the teams I've been with in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. Like, they're more mature, especially if you take off like the 2 or 3 veterans I've been around. And that's not every NBA team. And that's, again, not the kids' faults. But I think you can get to a higher level with higher, intellectual kids maybe than guys that are in continuity. You get a transfer here and there, a kid gets hurt, maybe stops playing, but I think Division I, those rates are probably higher.
No doubt.
No, for sure. Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I'm going to go back to, do you have anything else that you want to go over with it?
Me?
Yeah, because I've got one. I would just want to interject about the split cuts.
Yeah, no, I have a couple other things, but bring it up.
So it was like 3 or 4 years ago. I think, Jonah, we were having the conversation. I know I had another friend of mine, coaching friend of mine, and I made the comment after the Warriors that year. I think it was actually even pre-KD, so we'll just say it was 4 or 5 years ago. When they won the title, either first or second title, and I was like, every college team in America is going to be running split cuts next year.
Yeah.
And like, so we go and like we put it in, and like, granted, our personnel wasn't exactly like perfect for it, but like, it was not nearly as prevalent as I thought. And my thought on it, like, as I think back more, like, the rule, like 2-9 changes things, and so like the cutter component is big. like to be able to play off and like to be able to switch it, or like to be able to have that secondary defender there that like takes a lot of pressure off that defending that cut, which like in the NBA, like, I mean, all those teams, now granted you're talking about Steph and Clay, and some great passers with like Iguodala and Draymond and those guys that are even like Bogut that are passing out there. But like all those defenders in the NBA, like JJ Redick, they always talk like, oh man, the split cuts, like terrible, right? And like I never saw the wave in college like I kind of anticipated that we would. My question for you two, like more so for Zach and Tommy, like did you guys, Zach, have you seen that? Like are teams in the Big Ten doing that much? Like Tommy, do you guys see like much in like NESCAC teams that are doing that? We see a little bit, but like not to the level that I kind of thought we would a couple years ago.
Yeah, little Michigan State will do it some, and but we don't see a ton of of post ups besides Iowa. Actually, I guess we probably see more than most college teams do. But no, not a ton of split cuts. Not as much as I would have thought.
I know for us, the teams that run to Princeton, we'll see it a lot in that. But I know for us, when I was at Bates and doing our offense, we had a lot. I mean, like just like how you said about the play, it in essence it was a split cut, but it's a read. Like if they're switching, like we go into the game, we know if the team is switching, all right, just take 1-2, bang, go to the basket. Like our scouting led to what we were trying to do throughout the week with it. And then if you can hear them, like we teach them to listen. Normally when teams switch, you know what they say? Switch. So like listen for that and then like read it. That's when like it was becoming like it was very effective for us. Like we would get the feedback, like like they thought we had this great elaborate offense, and we were really just teaching our kids how to play basketball, read the situation and what to do. But I'm with you. But I mean Colby this year, I don't know if you got to see him at all, Ryan. They the way they run their Princeton, it's just they're just 5 guards, but everybody could kind of just duck into like the pinch post and then be the guy and then all this stuff. The pace and the speed of which they could do, and then they would just shoot from deep. They were a little bit reckless, but they could make it. It created like that kind of the last couple of years. They've created like what on the Division III scale level down of what it was like with Steph and Clay, because it was like you had to get out there or they were going to shoot it, and that got them the court so spread that you got some kids that like even me sitting in my suit and tie, I'm like that kid can't get by me now. Why are they getting by us? Because, they had the court so spread and we're trying to read it. So now they're getting downhill for layups. And then it's just like you just start to fall apart defensively,
Yeah. I think it's so interesting because for me, and like, granted, we're different. Like our style is different. Like we do have guys that we do throw the ball in the post. And like we've had really good post players basically since I've been at Carleton. And like, that's one of the first probably like 3 or 4 questions like our staff is going to talk about. The guy and I are going to talk about every year is like, okay, like what are our rules going to be when the ball goes in the post?
Yep, exactly.
Like there's a couple things that we got to know. Like that's one of them. Like our players, when they throw it in there, they got to know, are you spacing? Are you cutting? Are you screening? Like whatever it's going to be. And
to cut you off, Ryan, with that, like you guys focus a lot about that defensively also.
Yeah.
True.
Probably more, with your digs and stuff.
Yep.
And cutting through to your help spot more so than I would guess most teams.
Yep, that's probably right. Yeah. And again, like it's as you guys have alluded to, like there's less teams are going to that. Like there's not as many true bigs posts. Like we have some in our league, but like we're one of them. But there is less of that, just like pounded into posts in space and play off of it. But it always is, to your point, it always is something like how you're going to defend. Like how are you going to defend in the post? What's your offense? What are your rules going to be when the ball goes in there?
Yeah. Our league, Ryan, our league is still a big league, like we have. But I'm surprised because a lot of teams don't have like post-entry action.
Yeah.
And my Bates, we had the guy like that we definitely defended, and that's why like the Utah stuff was so familiar to me because I was like, how can we get even more space? And we had guards. We used to just almost run 3 to the foul line and just like just play, do whatever. You know what I mean? Like now there's so much space, but and like even like with the one set that you drew up with like the guard, like even nowadays it could be even a bigger guard, like just a bigger guard. Somehow you get him down there, and then run your split action off of that. You know what I mean? Invert the offense or some of that. I'm with you, Ryan. I'm really surprised that we don't, that in general, at our level, we're not seeing more of it. But I think you could tell me if I'm wrong. Like one thing about Division III, our level, like we probably have the best shooting this side of like the NBA. I mean, like, you know, like kids can just shoot the damn basketball. It's crazy. They may not be able to do anything else, but they can shoot it though, you know? So you better get out there. And then that creates a lot more spacing than when even have to worry about almost running anything sometimes, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
It's funny, Ryan, because I've asked you probably 5 times this year how many teams have ran stack. And you were like, maybe one team like dabbled with it a little bit. And like, I thought that this year would be the year that college teams all ran. You saw some in D1, Zach. I don't know how much you guys saw it.
We saw a lot of it. Probably 10 or so teams had that at least.
But like, I still think that, especially at the Division III level, that's kind of that next wave. But like you said, with split cuts, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Well, you know what it is, Jonah? I'll break it down for you. My belief is that what happens is that a lot of Division I's watching the NBA. They're watching that. They're one step away. Division III, more often than not, guys are maybe watching Division I. To be honest with you, like I've always loved college basketball, Division I and the pros, but I've always loved the pros too. But like I've watched way more pros now. Just because college, I don't know, maybe it's the one and done to play. I don't know. Like I've fallen off of it. But like I'm looking at the NBA, and I think also in Division III, that's where we should be going. Why? Because we can find the combination of a couple guys who we have. Like, you know, obviously you say that we have a Jokic or we have a Curry. Like we don't really have that. But for our level, we have a kid who can kind of maybe create the situation that can be that way. Because like if you look at a lot of times now with high level Division I don't know the exact percentage. I don't want to sound too crazy, but you know, like a certain percentage of it, they're just kind of playing spread pick and roll because that's what the kids want to play. And the coach, like if I'm going to have this kid, I told him I'm going to play this way, blah blah blah. You know, so like, what are we looking at? I could see that in the NBA, but a higher level with the wrinkle that maybe could be for my guy. You know, that could fit my personnel. You know.
I think one thing, just to add on back to the previous conversation about connecting with guys, is like, and I think of this at most levels, but like, I think players are dumb sometimes, but they're not stupid, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't matter, and a lot of people have said this before me, but it doesn't matter your height or skin color or religion or sex or sexual orientation. Like, if a guy knows or a woman knows that you can help them on the basketball court, like they're going to listen to you. And if they have success when they work with you, they're going to listen to you. And if they win games, now if you win a ton, maybe there's some ego stuff that gets involved, fine. But all things being equal, I think if you know what you're talking about and a guy knows he can trust you and you have some success with that, like you can't say anything. Whether you like the guy, whether he's funny, whether he's weird, it doesn't matter. Like, so I always come back to that, like, and I know personally, you know, I was a pretty bad Division III player, but if I can get a guy to play better, I think that's all that really matters, you know.
Well, guess what? You were pretty damn impactful for my 7th grade AAU team because nobody passed the head better than you and got us in transition. And you locked up on defense. I didn't care if you played offense. I didn't want you down there, actually.
You didn't want him playing offense.
Pass the head to somebody who could do something and play some damn defense.
I know I've kind of dragged on. I got a couple other things I'll speed through, and then someone else can kind of take the lead. Just to finish after timeout stuff, defensively, just know what you're trying to do. And it might depend on your substitution patterns a little bit. You know, are you with a group that can only play zone, or it's a more athletic group that you want to blitz with? But all things being equal, are you able to steal any possessions ATO? So is it a press? Is it a trap? Is it blitzing? Is it double teaming the post? Is it zone? Just get the offense to think a little bit, like we talked about after free throw. You guys all remember Clay Moser, who was with us in LA. He's at Arkansas now with Musselman, but he always loved blitzing and picking up backup point guards, kind of like you were talking about, Zach. Just because he didn't think they could handle the pressure really well. Like if they could, they wouldn't be a backup. So
right.
It's pretty simple concept. But again, just think, are there ways is if it's a really good player, do you blitz his first pick and roll of the game? Or do you blitz him, do you double team a good post player the first post of ATL just to get him to think about you a little bit and then go to your normal coverage? So you can steal possessions like that. And two different concepts, ATO. The first concept is I think about it like double up package. So, you can run an ATO and then run a second ATO the next play, which is a counter to the first one. You can run a normal play ATO, and then the next time down, either it's the same play or it's a different play. That's a normal play with a wrinkle, like an ATO wrinkle. And then, you might just run drag or step up or something that's like really simple, that first play ATO. And then the second play, whether it's the first made basket or first dead ball, whatever it is, get to your ATO. And then the second thing is the question you asked earlier, Tommy. And my answer to you is if it's good enough for Phil Jackson and if it's good enough for Igor Kokoshkov, it should be good enough for all of us. So I think 10, maybe 20% of your ATOs can be totally different, weird sets, alignments. I love the triple drag. I love the quadruple drag. If I could have 5 people in it, I would love that.
Can you have 5 people drag? That would be some shit right there.
I get attacked, but we would go.
But both Phil and Igor are huge on families and alignments. And like we talked about, Tommy, with I had a note here about you talking about football, which we did. But I think running your ATOs out of your families just makes your players more comfortable and confident. So, like I gave the example of Chin, like Tommy, you're going there, Zach's going here, Kirsch is going there, I'm going here. So again, I think you want the majority, 70, 80, 90% of your ATOs to be out of your families and just have wrinkles with them. And I also think, and Zach and I have talked about this, it makes you a lot harder to scout. So if you're running Chin and the point guard comes off the back screen, now he's just in the stack. It's the same play. It's pretty easy. It's just a little wrinkle. And now instead of being a pick and roll, whether it's single side tag or 2-man side, now it's just a stack pick and roll with the other guys in the corner. So I don't know if that answers your question from earlier, but
no, it does. I mean, it's like in football. Like I could run a off tackle out of 5 wide. How? I motion back to single back. You know what I mean? I could be, you can run all these plays out of so many different formations. So now it looks like we have 100 plays, but we only really have 2 or 3 plays, but we have formations that we know where we are.
Yeah.
That's what I agree with you. Like last year, we kind of faded on it a bit. We just didn't practice it enough, but we basically had side out about ATO package. Like we had a different offense, but it was the same offense. Exactly. Just line up a different formation, bing, bing, bing. Now we're in our regular thing.
That's where my evolution has come. Like I would bring things to the staff last few years, and Brian Shaw always told the story. He said Phil would do anything you wanted him to do, try at ATO, if you could fit it and get to it out of the triangle. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing, just because he didn't want to run something completely differently. So if I said, Kirsch, you're in charge of the offense next year, you can only pick 3 things, and you pick horns, chin, and floppy. Doesn't matter. There's infinite things we can do out of all of those.
For sure.
And we can get to all the things I just showed and infinite other ones that are good actions, probably better actions. But I just think that it's a lot harder to scout, and you're not reinventing the wheel for your players, which I agree. Like you talked about, Tommy, like I think guys can get stale, and you can keep it fresh with some new things and have some fun and invert offenses and all of that. But all things being equal, you want your guys to be confident in what they're doing.
Well, for us too, Ryan, is your league? Do you have a midweek game? Like, what's your league schedule?
So we're essentially Wednesday, Saturday with maybe like 4 Mondays sprinkled in. So we have maybe 2 to 3 times a year where it's going to be a Monday, Wednesday, Saturday week.
Okay, see, yeah. So for us, we're Friday, Saturday. So we're literally, every now and then you have a Tuesday game or Monday game, but we're like a football league. Like I'm so shocked, like how many teams don't add to their offense. Like we will add just 1 or 2 things for each team, each week, like just because we have all week. What the hell else are we gonna do? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then like teams would just never. And then, oh, you're running so much, and it was just like, okay, And normally, you know what it was? I'd watch an NBA game and I'd see like, you know what, that could work for us. Bang, let's just try to kind of get it to fit within. And we just get so many points and cheap points and good looks off the stuff.
Right.
And you see the coaches like, we didn't see that, whatever. I know it's harder when you have like that week, but for our league, I can't believe how many teams, as I watch the film, it's like, yep, they haven't added anything since whenever. And it's like now we know their stuff better than they do,
For sure.
I think so. The next thing I just want to talk about quickly is the crunch time package. And it was funny thinking about it, like my evolution of how I think about the game of basketball at Carleton. I don't know if you guys still do it, but we had a play called transition right and transition left, and they're just staples that you can kind of flow into. So that was kind of the first time I'd heard about that. Then early in my years with the Lakers, it was early offense, it was half court offense, ATO, SOB, and BOB, right? And then it kind of evolves to early offense, post-ups, isolations, sideline pick and rolls, mid pick and rolls, continuity, jumper, ATO, after free throw, SOB, BOB, end of game. And again, I don't think players necessarily need to know all of those, but it just helps. It really helps with scouting, and Zach and I can attest to that. But it also has given me a framework to watch basketball and watch how the game flows. So if it's early offense, it's a thing that you can just flow into, and you don't always have to call something. So I'm still kind of in that phase, but Igor really brought us this year having, like early offense, secondary, half court sets, whisper plays, which are kind of like quick hitters that you can run. Might be after free throw, might be dead ball, but kind of like a special. And then a crunch time package, which is different than end of game. Crunch time, is about the 4 to 6 minute mark. But if you're struggling in the first half, you have to change something up. Maybe you get to it, but it's really those last 4 or 5 minutes of the game. For example, Toronto, that hammer I showed you guys, the hit and follow hammer, that's like there. And I don't know this, but just from watching them a lot, that's one of their favorites towards the end of the game. Like sometime in the fourth quarter, you should expect to see that. So again, it can be a special, like a hammer or elevator or something kind of fancy like that, but it can also be something you flow into, whether it's dive or step up on one side. It doesn't really matter what it is, but you might just, and I think, the equivalent for football is probably having like a 2-minute drill. Again, it's not your Hail Mary and end of game plays, but it's approaching that. So just a nice change of pace. And, like I think a couple of years ago when you guys won, I think at St. Thomas, you scored on like a pistol hammer, Kersh. And like, I don't know if that was like a
we were down 15 with 9 minutes left, and we basically went into pistol
so,
for like the last 9 minutes.
Yeah. So that's
the first time we run.
Yeah. So that's example. Like
we scored on hammer, Ricky. We scored on like a bunch of it at the end of the game. It was like.
So, like, I just remember, like, putting this together, I just remembered that. Like, that's an example. And, like, Tommy, you were talking about, like, you might not show it for 2 weeks, and now it's a time we get to it. So I think that just having some type of crunch time package, you might not get to it every game, but that could be good for your offense. Lastly, I just want to talk about end-of-game stuff. 2 schools of thought. I think you can play and you don't let the defense set, or you call the timeout in advance. Again, for the last time, I'm going to bring out my guy. Sorry, Giants fans, but Belichick has said it is better to.
He started his career with the Giants. Don't worry about it.
So you're welcome, actually. But he has said that it is better to have less time and more timeouts than more time and less timeouts. And this comes back to what I was talking about. Like, the longer you can extend the game, the better. So, if you're down 7 with 40 seconds left and you have 2 timeouts, I think some NBA coaches just automatically call it. But if we can go down and score, a 2 or a 3, we're not hunting threes. We're just hunting a score. A foul, make some free throws. Now it's a 2-possession game. I still have 2 timeouts, and a lot can happen with that. So we played, and this comes back, we played Memphis at home the first game after the All-Star break this year, and they fouled like 6 or 7 times. We ended up fouling 2 3-point shooters and missed 3 free throws. So we didn't help ourselves out. We ended up winning by 6 or 7. But the point is, like what I was talking about earlier, like I don't think they could have won that game. It would have been very difficult. But I thought that Taylor Jenkins did a really good job in extending that game. And then with 11 seconds or so, he called the first timeout, and then 6-something, he called the next timeout. So if the game's still going, you still have a chance. So I just think it's important to try to extend games when you can. I know it's a little different in college, but we have the timeout advance rule. I know a guy at Carleton used to have a full court play to catch at the hash to call the timeout. So, if there's 1.6 seconds left in the game and you're down 2 and they have one more free throw and they make it, now you're down 3. You could get it in. You could try to run an Oscar that we talked about earlier or a full court play. But I think you run that kind of 3/4 court pass ahead and you call a timeout on the catch and you tell the ref you're doing it, you're going to have over a second to draw up a sideline out of bounds. And to me, that's a much higher percentage than drawing up, a Hail Mary half-court shot. And then that's pretty much your advanced timeout. So something
Tommy may have seen this. So Pomona Pitzer played Emory in the Sweet 16, or it was to advance the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament. So Tad Boyle, Colorado coach, his kid plays at Pomona. So it was like 3.5, whatever left. They advanced it to half court, called timeout. They with the pass, and then they ran Brad Stevens the winner play, and he hit the 3 at the buzzer. And it was perfect, to your point. I mean, it was perfect execution to get it. And I think I saw something where the stats are like the percentage of scoring like is exponentially higher, like from a full, as opposed to like a half court sideline play versus a full court play with like less than like 4 seconds, whatever it is.
Yeah. And then really to bring it full circle, I just want to talk about 3 different kind of family alignments in the game that are good. Everyone knows the boxes and elbows. You can run zippers, you can run Iversons, you can run elevators, you can run, zip post and get a hammer on the backside. So there's a lot of different things you can do out of that. I'm not going to show any of those, but that's just a basic one that most NBA teams run some variety of. This Dallas alignment, I'm not going to give away too many names or anything like that, but it's pretty similar. You kind of have the guys around the elbow and block, or they can be stacked. Then a guy on this weak side elbow and weak side corner. So again, like we talked about from a scouting perspective, they come out in something like this. I don't know, and they have a lot of different options with this. But I just think that to Phil Jackson and Igor's point, it doesn't always have to be fancy. Like you could just run this and we could all sit here and diagram 10 different options out of an alignment like this. So they have a lot of success with that. And then lastly, I just want to talk about X or scissors. Popovich has ran this a lot with his Spurs teams. Some other guys have done it as well. But you can get into either ISO if you have a good guy in the 5 can just get to the dunker, or it can get into that 1-5 mid pick and roll. Another option out of that, you can get into a hammer. Can you guys see this thing I'm moving? Yeah, okay. I'm just gonna move it out of the way. So, zip him up, and then you're really getting this guy down to set the hammer on this side. And again, I'll send these.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thanks.
You can get into the comeback action, or after action, New York action, whatever you want to call it, where you're passing back to the inbounder and you're bringing the guy that X'd up to the ball, and you can even have a hammer on the weak side, or you can get into that Bilbao stuff we talked about earlier. Just some options to get you thinking. So again, you know, like Pokey was running this over 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
again, I don't know who started it, but it's good action, put it that way. And then they're very similar. Utah ran this earlier this year, and Bogdanovich hit a game winner, but you're pretty much clearing out the help guy and then bringing the two back off. You can also curl him to the top. The one can come all the way up, and then two can kind of loop around and come back. Here's a different variation of the very similar play where two gets to the corner, four is clearing out, and then one is screening his own. So that's the video that's the diagram of this play right here where Utah, they're down 2.
1.6 left to play. Ingles trying to get it in. Having trouble. Bogdanovich, tough shot. He went in!
And it's ironic because Utah actually lost on a very, pretty much the same play to Kemba when he was on Charlotte on the same play. So it's kind of like nice revenge for their staff and their team to win on a very similar play.
Good players makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And then I think, just talking about this play kind of segues me into defensively, but just to touch on end-of-game defense, a few thoughts. Like, do you foul when you're up? Is it when you're up 3? Kind of, Tommy, you were talking about this earlier. What's your number? Is it 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds? Doesn't matter if they have timeouts left or not. Do you switch?
Well, also,
yeah.
Every time we ask ourselves that question, I'm hoping that we're asking, like, how do we practice that? Because it's always great to talk about it. And, you don't want to get anybody hurt in practice. I get it. But, like, we have to practice it.
Like, are you not letting them shoot the ball? Are you wrapping them up so they can't get into the shooting motion? All of that stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, for this, are you switching 1 through 5? Are you switching 1 through 4? If you have a Rudy Gobert on defense, is he even in the game? Do you have a lineup out there that can switch 1 through 5? Is it before the ball is inbounded? The good thing about the design of this play is Donovan Mitchell, they're switching 1 through 5 before the ball is inbounded, and Donovan Mitchell is screening his own. So they switch, and he's screening Harden right there. And, of course, Bogdanovich makes an improbable shot between two guys, and you're probably living with that if you're Houston. But still, the design of the play is that. So just, again, are we switching before it's inbounded, after it's inbounded? One last option that I know Toronto did with Dwayne Casey, Boston's done with Brad Stevens, but ring it. So you have someone on the ball, and no matter what the offense does, you just kind of zone up that 3-point line. So if you're up 3, if you're up 5, at what point do you do this? And with how much time left do you do this? So just another thing to consider. And really the last thing I wanted to talk about was just having like an end of game template. And like, it doesn't, I have it on an Excel sheet on an iPad with diagrams and video that I think I've shared with all you guys before, but just have some type of system that what you want to do before you're in that situation. And Zach, you'll touch on this. Popovich was known for having these note cards. That was his play calls, kind of like Guy has at Carleton. And then he would switch to his crunch time one, and then he would switch to his end of game one. So if that works for you, great. The moral of the story, though, is it doesn't matter. Your system is just be prepared for what works for you as an individual, for your staff, and for your team. So that's really all I had. I don't know if there's other questions. I know we're about 2 hours in now. I can go for another 2 hours. I know some of us have but I'd love to hear.
I might be cursing at my kids tomorrow. I'm gonna be tired, but I'll be okay though.
And yeah, like I'll email all this stuff, all the diagrams and videos and the notes to you guys. But it's funny, like when you put something together like this, I don't know if you guys experience this too, but it helps you learn it better, and it solidifies some things for you. So thank you guys for giving me the
Hey, Jonah, definitely. I mean, like think about it too. Is that like like you're practicing presenting this stuff, like that's gonna make you be better on an interview when the time comes. Because like we won't have to get into like the hiring stuff nowadays, but like that's big. Sometimes just the presentation, how you're presenting yourself. Like, yeah, obviously your stuff, but like that can be a separate. I've been in the room and that separated people. I'm like, it just people were wowed by someone because of how they presented, even if maybe someone was better, more knowledgeable, or whatever.
No, for sure. No, I thought it was. I mean, I thought it was really good. It's. I thought you went into like really good detail with pretty much everything, and like you covered all the different facets really well. I would say mine's more like macro-ish.
Perfect. And it was intentional. Like I left it vague. I want everyone to come with something different. I think that's going to be better for all of us.
I mean, we were all working on a 15-minute, not a 15-hour timeline.
Exactly. Yeah, I had to go find my attorney. I had to get an attorney to sign the waiver. First of all, that took me 2 days right there.
Jumping off point. I don't know, Ryan, though. Take the lead. I think. Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, I can, and I'm going to share. See if I can do this. Can you see this PowerPoint or no? Let's see here. Hold on 1 second. Oh, there it is.
Yep, it's up now.
Yeah. All right, is that the whole screen?
Yep.
All right, sweet. So like I said, Jonah's like went into great detail. It was awesome. I have some clips. I have a handful of clips like at the end that we can just kind of go through just so you guys can have some visuals with it. But mine's a little bit more macro, and like I wanted to give a little bit of context too, just for our team too. And I alluded to this already, like because I think it's all relative too, right? Like from like special situations. And one thing I'll even back up a little bit, like I think for me, special situations, like part of the reason I was interested in this as a topic is because like I think about the toughest teams to prepare for are the teams that like, it's not that they run like a lot of shit, but it's like they have a lot of different areas that they're good at. Obviously the best teams are like the ones with the good players and like some of them, but like in general terms, it's like you think about like as you're preparing for teams, like it's like, man, like, okay, like St. Thomas, yeah, they have really good players, but like you got to make sure you cover this. So you got to make sure you cover like this ball screen, like whatever, like all the variety of stuff that they do with like different personnel. And that's where like some of the situations I think about Augsburg, and I'm a little bit biased because I coach there too. And like, I mean, you got to cover, like you got to spend time. I mean, we always cover under OBs, right? Like that's one of our principles. They always cover, but like they do some different stuff with their sideline stuff, and they do some different stuff, like whether it's in the game or like some different special situations that like even like free throw dive tap that like you got to cover, like, so you're not giving up a possession from that standpoint too. So, so for us, like, again, like our pace, like we don't play, like we were eight out of 11. So we were like the bottom third from a pace standpoint. Like, we don't play as many guys. Like our rotation is this past year was 6 guys. Right. And like, generally it like might be 7. So like from a pace standpoint, like we're very much an execution team. We're not going to be a team that's going to like roll the balls out and like we're just going to run ball screen continuity for 40 minutes. Like we're not going to do that. Like we're going to run a lot of sets. And like any of these opportunities, like if it's a sideline, under OB, like any quote unquote like special situation where we can get an advantage, like we're going to try to take advantage of that. Okay. And then just from a context standpoint, from like for our team last year, like we were this is the one exception to what Jonah was referring to earlier with the Kings. Like we were super young. We started 3 freshmen last year, and the only guys we brought off the bench were freshmen. So like we had 2 seniors, and it was like they were basically like coaches last year. Like they were the only guys that ever played in a college game before that. So it was interesting, like just throughout the year and like how our execution, like we couldn't do as much from a special situation like early in the year. Because we had to get the core stuff down. We had to get like the play, like how you going to function offensively, how you going to function defensively, like right away. And then we built towards the end of the year, we built into some of the situation stuff from that standpoint. So just looking at last year too, like for us, like under OBs and like some of these stats, like the synergy stats are like, you know, like it's
Right.
give and take, right? With those, like we know those, but like, in general terms, like our under OB like was pretty good for the most part. We were middle, like for the most of the year, we were like in the top 3, and then it kind of like it kind of settled in the middle of the pack from that standpoint. Like our D was like statistically wasn't that bad. I don't feel like we gave up that many like under OB baskets, but like those are 2. I put those at the top because like those are 2 that we emphasize quite a bit. And part of it is based on like possessions, right? So like, as we think about this from a macro standpoint, like, and this is one thing I say that like Guy is really good at, our head coach. We're like, what are the things that happen the most during the game? Like those are the things you want to be good at. Like, and so, and even going back to like, now I'm looking at telling Jonah this like the other day, like as I'm going back and looking at all these like 3-point field goal attempts, and I've got all these categories, like how we're giving up these attempts. Like when we practice, like, you know, our ball screen defensive cover, like what are the things, how much time are we spending on certain actions? And then like you see like, okay, well maybe teams aren't getting as many shots out of this action, right? Like, and so it's the same thing with special situations. Like there needs to be like it needs to be like a percentage, right? Like with what you're doing, like how much you're doing, like it needs to be proportional to like what happens at the game. So like being able to know like under OB, like how many possessions, same thing with like side in the game, you know, like make sure those are all things that are proportionate with like your practice time. We practice 2 hours a day. So like how we're going to do that, like as it goes throughout the year, and like in general terms, like special situations, this came up earlier, like for us, I think Tommy brought this up, like when we get into like conference season, like we hardly ever, like we don't scrimmage hardly at all in practice, and like especially days after games. Like day after games are like we dedicate almost 30 minutes like in those practices to special situations. And like I get a handful of days where we can do some of those like, you know, like end of game, like late game, like things that might only happen honestly like once in a year. Like you might see those situations, but like over the course, like you practice them a couple times during the year, and like your guys are ready. And like that's the whole thing about like having your guys prepared. Like they've at least seen those situations, you've practiced it. Going back to Tommy, you were talking about the fouling earlier, like up 3. We practiced that late in the year one day. And one of the things that we emphasized with the guys was like where you foul, like on court positioning. Because if you get to a certain point where you're basically like below the free throw line, inside the 3-point line, instead of being a side out, that turns into under OB,
Yeah.
right? So like you got to make, when you give up that foul, you got to be above free throw line extended, above the top of the key, outside 3-point line. So like we want that to be a side out of bounds, not an under OB for the opponent from that standpoint. So like some of these, like and Jonah, you brought this up with into game. So like this past year we were 3-4 in like what I categorize as close games. And like what I'm categorizing as a close game is like a minute with a minute left to play, it's a 1 possession game. Okay. So like those games, a lot of times, like you might end up on some of those games, you might end up winning or losing by 8. Like you might win by 3 possessions or more.
Yeah.
Like if it's a minute to go, like that's a close game in my opinion. Like you're going to get in on some level, you're going to be in your late game situations.
You're saying you were 3-4. You were 3.
We were 3-4. So we played 7 games. We won 3. We lost 1.
Got it. Yeah.
Yep. And then just like a couple, like for us, like press attacks, we spend a lot of time with that. I got a couple clips that I'll show you. And then free throw dive tap is something, again, Jonah, you brought that up. Like we emphasize that a little bit, maybe more than some level. Part of it's in college. Like, you have more opportunities for that. Like the rules allow us to put 2 guys in there. And I went back and looked at it. It's like we've been a bad free throw shooting team the last couple years. But like our free throw, over 60% of our misses we missed. I was just looking at the stat of synergy. It was like we missed like 100. It was like 125. I'll just say like we had 125 missed free throws last year. It was like between 60 and 65% of those were on the first shot in a 2-shot situation. It's like we didn't get the dive tap. We made a lot of like, which is just kind of interesting, right? Like, you know, so how many dive tap situations did you really have? Like, we maybe had like, I don't know, 50 plus, but not as many as you kind of think from that standpoint, which is just kind of interesting to look again when you think about time and like what opportunities there are from that standpoint. You guys talked about this a little bit, like, you know, everybody does this on some level. For us, it was a little bit more important. And like, this is kind of a special situation, but in general terms, it goes back to us being an execution team. So the last 2 games this year, our rotation was, again, like 6 guys. And so when you play 6 players, like, you don't have to be a St. Olaf or Carleton grad or Williams grad to know, but like there's basically 5 different lineup combinations that you have, right? Like when you play 6 guys, like you got 5 different lineup combinations. Like the math is pretty easy, even for a guy like me. And so like one of the things we did the last couple games was like, and again, everybody does this on some level. We just took it to a little bit more of an extreme where, you know, we took those 5 lineup groups that we had and we had a menu. We had 4 to 6 plays, like with each of those lineup groups. And so like, okay, and they're playing 2 to 3 minute stints. Okay, so in this group, like this group's on, like this is our 4 to 5 play package that we're going to right here. And like we did that the last 2 games. It's kind of a small sample size, and both games were at home. And one of them was against a playoff team. That was a non-playoff team, but we averaged 90 points a game in those 2 games. And our execution was as good as it's been all year. Now that's also partly because we're playing a bunch of young guys. Like you get to the end of the year and they're not freshmen anymore. But I think part of that too is it's really hard to score at the end of the year. Like teams are like, there's less secrets. In general terms, the officiating, like things go more, the game's more physical. And so like that stat, I was a little bit, I was happy with that. We were pleased with that from that standpoint. And Tommy, like to your point, you talked about this earlier. We added some different actions. You know, again, when you're only playing like limited lineups and when you're not practicing, like when your execution, like that's one thing that we do is like, if you look at like what we were doing offensively the last game of the year, and if you go back and look at any of the first 5 games of the year, like you'll find some similarities, but not a lot. Like we adapted and we adjusted things throughout. So like when you have it, and there's going to be some growing pains when you're younger, like we were this year, it's harder to like see those early gains with that. But like at the end of the year, like it was a pretty effective strategy for us from that standpoint. So looking at like for next year, like for me as I go through, and like I'll get to a couple clips here again with some of the special situation stuff, but for me, again, I tend to like look at from a macro standpoint too, like what are the questions for like special situations? Like next year, we're going to have 3 to 4 freshmen that we're going to play. We'll be a little bit more experienced, but we're still going to have 3 to 4 young guys that we're going to rely on to play. And so like, we'll be a little bit further ahead. We won't be at the starting point we were this year. We'll be a little bit further ahead, but we're still going to have some of that. We also don't have any seniors next year, which is a little bit of an anomaly. But for me, as I look at it, like I'm really looking at it more of like 2 years from now, like trying to build that, you know, and so we'll probably play more guys. Like I could see us next year, like playing a little bit deeper bench, more rotation. So we get those guys experience. When you have seniors, like we're all competitive and like the object is to win every single game that you play. Right. And like, we're not going to compromise that at all. But I personally feel like when you have seniors like that too, like you always feel an obligation to them, like to make sure that like they, like whatever your goals are, whatever's achievable, whether it's postseason playoffs, like them going, like whatever, like, and this is a little bit unique next year from that standpoint. again, you're trying to win every single game, but like, will we be able to do that? Will we play more guys from that standpoint? And just a couple of things too, like under OBs, like we run almost everything we do is out of 1-4 low. So like we have like whatever, we probably ran, some variation this year, probably somewhere between, 12 and 15 different actions out of it. At the end of the year, we were running like 4,
Right.
like you just kind of like gravitate to what kind of works and fits. And like, we did fine with it. But like, will we do that? Will we stay with that? Like, is that stale? Like we've been doing that for a few years. How will that change? And then in the game, Jonah, you alluded to the pistol stuff that we've done. Like, do we change that up? Like, is there something else? Is there some other family or package that we look at? We did less of it this past year. So like those are some stuff that like, those are just some of the things for me, like questions, kind of moving forward from that standpoint.
Ryan, what's UST?
St. Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're
getting
getting
the boot with the big boys. So a couple of things, like just some other resources, additional thoughts, like under OBs. So like Jonah, you talked about this earlier. So like, what are teams in your league doing, right? Like who's good? Like what are they doing in the game? What are they doing under OB? It's interesting. St. Thomas, like for a long time, like for probably the first 75% of the year, the season, like they led the country, like D1, D2, D3, like points per possession on under OB plays. They ran one play. They literally ran one play. It was like 1-4 low. They ran like kind of an they ran the ball side corner guy. He ran kind of off like a little, like, I don't even know what kind of screen, like up screen you would call it. He came across, maybe like Iverson, but it's on the baseline. They'd post up their post player and they'd run a handoff to point guard. That was it. And like, they got 2 really good players doing that. And like, we thought we schemed it and like we had it covered. It didn't freaking matter. Those guys scored. Like they had really good players, kind of like the Utah play there. Like sometimes like when you got really good players, like you don't have to be super creative. Bethel does some good stuff. Like they're pretty creative. St. Olaf does some good stuff. I don't have the clip, but I don't know if you guys saw the St. Olaf.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
It was on ESPN, like you might have seen it, but like it was basically like less than 3 seconds, 0.3 to go, the tip play that they had, and it was you had the Jay Trina clip from earlier, but like it was a really good play that they ran. It didn't count, but like that's one to maybe have in your back pocket for a late game play like that.
Yeah.
For me, Concordia. So Rich Glass was the head coach at Concordia College in Moorhead. He was at North Dakota for a while when they were Division II and transitioned to Division I. He's the best end of game coach I've seen, like in my time. Like every time, like they're the only team where like if you're up 5, almost as a rule, like for us, if you're up 5 at the 4-minute mark, like you're in good shape. Like if you're up 2 possessions, like you should be in good shape. You should win the game. And like Concordia was the only team where like if you're up 5 with a minute to go, like you like buckle up because like they're gonna shorten the game. They're gonna hit threes. He's got all sorts of crazy stuff. He was really, really good at that. He's got some really good stuff. And then sideline, I put I've got a couple clips I'll show. But Brad Stevens, obviously, everybody's a lot of people are copying his stuff. And like for me, looking at like, so now what are some of the new stuff? Like what are some new actions, Jonah, some of the stuff that you showed, like how can we kind of steal and replicate and put some of that stuff in kind of in our own package. I'll show a couple clips here. I can get to it.
Ryan, on your maybe first, can you go back to your first slide?
Yep.
Or maybe the next one. So,
right
yeah, because I had this, I didn't mention it. I was just wondering, and I've asked you about this before. Like, so you say SOB, like left side, right side package?
Yeah, so I'll show that. I got a couple clips of that.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So, so we basically did a couple things. Like we have our late game, like sideline, like into game, like specials. But we had a couple things that we went to, like off sideline, and like we scored. I think we scored. I looked at the stat today. I think we scored like 13 possessions total sideline, but like it was only like 6 or 7 were on like stuff that we actually ran that we got action on. We did have a couple packages that we ran, like, left side, right side. Like it was all dependent upon, like, we have 2 lefties, like our point guard's lefty. So like him as a passer, like it was really advantageous to have him on one side. And like our best player, he's a lefty. So like some of the stuff for him, it was more advantageous for him on, coming from the left sideline, because we can get him going to his left more from that standpoint. So that's really what it was.
Also, like, because we've talked about it with Fox this year being a lefty, like if it's on the right sideline, not even end of game, just general SOBs, like if he can hit and follow and come off going left, it's pretty good. And even like baseline out of bounds, we've talked about this before, but like,
yeah,
like you said, like if Buddy likes going right to left to shoot, then a baseline out of bounds on the left side is better for that. You know what I mean?
And I didn't put that on our under OB too, but like we have a left side, right side package for under OB. I think that's fairly common for a lot of teams, but like on my play card that I have, like I've got, it's categorized like, okay, left side, like we've got, 10, 11, 12, and it depends on who's in the game too, on like what we're going to do, and those, and just trying to highlight there's certain actions that, you want to go to, but we've kind of divided those up in those sides too, from that standpoint. I'll just skip to those clips, and then you guys can, like, any questions, and jump in if you have any questions too, but let me see if I can do this here. All right. No? How come I can't get back? All right, there we go. Okay. You guys see that?
Yep.
Okay. So Jonah, you showed this earlier. So opening tap. So we don't do much like opening tap play. But like this is, I think you call it pocket, right?
Yeah.
Like where you tip it to the pocket.
Or the cup. Yeah.
So we do this game. This was the one time where we actually scouted this. So this kid right here for St. Olaf, 34, and you'll kind of see him. Like he's great at stealing the tip. He leaves early, just like you showed. And so like this play, we sandwich these 2 guys here, basically sandwich, and like he's essentially going to screen him, and we're tapping it right over here. And he kind of misses him, but he at least makes him go to go off. And like I don't think you can see it here, but like I basically just told the ref right before that, I was like, do not let 34 leave early. Do not let him right before he tips it. So that's the tip. And then, so this play, this is like an ATO that we run, and this is our pet play. Everybody's got one of these. We call this, like, it's our curl play. We call it Zip 1. We stole it from, I think Rick Alleman was probably the first that we kind of saw that did this. You guys have maybe seen this as well as some other plays, but this is our go-to play. We score on this, almost every time we run it. Little curl play. And we save that. That's our best, like, end of game, like late game. We're like inside of 3 minutes, 2 minutes, like depending on what the situation is. Like that's our pet play that we go to. This was a rivalry game. It was kind of a big deal. We were like, you know what, we're going with it right away. We're not saving it. Like, who knows? And so we ran it right away. Have you guys seen this before? Zach, Tom, have you guys seen this play before?
I don't think I've seen that with the curl to where you get the guy curling. I've seen it where you dump it to the post. You know what I mean? Like that guy kind of, yeah. But I like that. Yeah, there's no help there. Yeah.
The key to the play is the guy that's currently the guy, like it's not a screen. So like you got to have your post guy who sells it as a post up. You got to get it a little bit higher. And then we tweaked it. Like you got to get your weak side. We ran it one time this year that didn't work. And we had some guys in different spots. And like you have to sell this flare action too, because if you don't, this guy, he'll sit in the gap and take this away. But if you really sell this flare, you can occupy these 2 guys. And for us, like we did it, we almost always do it. We used to do it on the left elbow, but like our point guard's left-handed and our best scorer is left-handed. So like we've been able to modify it here the last couple of years. But like that play is money. Like that play works. Like I know everybody's got one of those, but like that's ours.
To cut you off, the Miami ran that a lot with D Wade, curling off LeBron. Like I just went back and watched one of their finals in Miami. I was telling Zach about it, and they ran they got into it a little differently, but they ran that exact play. And they got the first time they get D Wade over the top for the layup, and then the second time they just get LeBron as a post up, which again is pretty good offense. Turns out.
We stole it. Like the first time we saw it was like 7 years ago. We saw it it was like in a Rick Alderman video, and it was like Shane Battier was the passer, and Kevin Martin was the cutter.
Okay.
And like, it was hilarious. Like both Guy and I were watching the clips, and it was like late game, same thing you'd see in the NBA, and like you're seeing coaches that are like opposing coaches that are screaming that this is coming, and like they couldn't freaking stop it. It was like super impressive to see. So this is the free throw dive tap that we do. Again, I don't know, Tommy, Zach, like this is more of a college thing. Like I don't know if you guys do this or have seen this, but like basically like Jonah showed it pretty much perfect earlier. Like the alignment for us is an offensive dive tap that we do. And like we have a saying, it's dive taps win games. And like, so it's like these are those like little, like the possessions again, like we played 7 games this year that were decided by, like a couple possessions or less. Like how many of these like dive taps, dive taps win games. And like, if you can steal an offensive possession or defensive possession or whatever from a dive tap, like that's a kind of a big deal in our program. So like basically we have dive man, tap man, and like we have the dive man. Like generally you want your tap man to be like the taller guy or like your longest guy who can like rebound. And the dive guy over here, I'll back it up a little bit. Like he starts, so like the dive guy, his job right here, 3 Alex, like he's trying to get to this opposite block like Jonah showed. And like, so he starts, like you see his top foot is on top of this marker right here. He's trying to create as much space away from this guy as possible, and he's diving it to that opposite side. Okay. Your tap man right here, Matt, like his job, like, and I think he does it right. He does it a little bit late, but like you got to get your hand up. So you got to get your hand on top of where like this defender's hand is. So like he can't hold teams will hook you.
Yeah.
The smart teams that know it's coming. And his job, like he's supposed to be like on this block, on this marker, like right up, pressed up close. Cause his job, he's trying to get right to the middle of the paint. So when the ball comes out, he taps it. And this is your long rebounder right here. He stands right at the top of the key. Like you stand right there and you wait. And like he leaks out just a touch right here. But you stand right there and you wait. And like this guy, his job, he's tapping it to you. I think our shooter actually gets the rebound. But like, that's basically our tap right there. Like that's, and so you'll see some teams that will do that. Like again, Augsburg, like they're like, I coached there for 6 years. They like, it's a Roy Williams thing. And I don't know who Roy Williams got it from, but that's where we got it at Augsburg. And like, before we play Augsburg every year, we have to talk about dive tap. Like it's in the scouting report, it's on the board, like free throw blockouts, it's on there because we have to, because they will steal possessions from you if you're not on point with that. This is sideline. So this is a right side sideline. We call this hook. I think this is a Brad Steve. I don't know. It's an NBA play. Stagger, slip him, flare. And then we got, like, you guys have seen that. So like sideline play. One more time. Stagger it, switch. Both of them go with so we put both shooters in that spot. You got a shooter coming off, and then, we got a shooter as a screener too. So whichever one, it's kind of a read for him from that standpoint. That's a right sideline play. Left side, this is, everybody runs this now. Brad Stevens play, the winner play. Then you see one more on the left side. Our best player here is a lefty. So we run this action where he comes off a hand. This is really bad defense. He comes off a handoff, and then if he doesn't have a layup, he's got hammer in the corner that we run. So like we'll do those off both sidelines. You brought this up earlier. So press attack. So we did this as the last game of the year. This is the football play you're talking about. So we spend a little bit more time, I guess, on press attacks than a lot of teams. And like both press attack when you're up, up 3, up 2 possessions, and they have to foul, being able to get the ball inbounded. And then also like if you're down, and like just a couple things too, we always talk about, like, everybody knows this, but like the inbounder, like you wait, like on any under OB or like any late game, like you always stand out of bounds here first before, like, so like make sure everybody's set before the official hands you the ball.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, and officials are cracking down on that a little bit, but like late game, I don't really have a clip
Tie
of
your
it.
shoe if they're cracking down on it. Tie your shoe.
Exactly.
That's what we tell our guys.
So this is another, like, one of those little things, but like end of game. So like everybody, like we actually had a situation 4 years ago against St. Thomas where we ran charge play, like the baseline charge play that like people
They didn't
running.
call it. It was
They didn't call it.
Oh,
Like,
I remember.
as a coach, like I said earlier, like you might get one of those situations a year, maybe. Yeah. And like what we didn't do is, like, we had the perfect guy inbounding it. He was the perfect guy. He did everything right, except he didn't tell the official before the play, like, that we're taking a charge. And I told the back official who was in front of our bench. I didn't tell this guy right here. I wasn't able to get there. And like, you can't yell that out either, right? Like, so it has to be your inbounder. So like when we practice it now, we always tell the inbounder, like, you tell this guy, if we're taking a charge, like, you tell him right here, we're taking a charge. And like, we have a couple variations of the charge play now where like we run that as like a false action. And then we have a second charge, like where we try to get a back screen off of a guy. And so like, that's where like we would tell like this official right here, hey, just so you know, like we're running this charge play, but it's not going to be, it's going to be the back. You just have to watch the play. And on any of those, like late game, like if you're down, we always tell the inbounder, like when you get it, like if there's somebody on the ball, like as soon as the official hands you the ball, stick the ball over the line and turn your hand. So I don't know if you guys have seen that, but like, it's kind of like your thing with the tip ball, Jonah, where like you might get a foul or delay a game. Like maybe a guy reaches over, maybe he fouls you. Like we always, and like every time I say that, every year when I introduce that, the guys always laugh. They're always like, what the hell are you talking about? Like nobody's ever going to do that. But like, that's what you do. Like just go through it. Like he's probably not going to foul you, but just go through and do that. So this is the 5 out of bounds, like 5 guys, the football play right here. The way we do it, we line it up. We hit the middle guy. We run, this is our best passer. Also happens to be our worst free throw shooter. So like he's the inbounder. And that's one thing I will say too, like Jonah, you talked about that. I think it came up. Know who I think you said like, know who the quarterbacks are, or like know if you have multiple, like, so we basically do a tryout. Like we have one day, like during the winter term where it's like a tryout to be who's going to be our home run passer, who's going to be our inbound passer, like late game, you know, from that standpoint. And this kid right here, Henry, who is a senior, averaged like 5 points a game, like very modest in a lot of ways. He's the best inbounds passer I've seen that we've had. And like, so losing him, like for the last 4 years, like he was a quarterback on his football team. Like he's a super smart, like that's a loss. Like we got to replace that. Like we got to have somebody else. Like, and so like, those are those little things too, is like you go throughout the year, like, okay, who are these guys that we trust in these situations? And like, I told him, I was like, dude, you have no idea how valuable you have been from that situation. I don't even have to worry about, like, I know who's passing the ball in, like every single game, if it's a late game situation, whatever, like you're the one that's going to be making the pass. But this particular play, this is the play you've seen. It's a little bit more common now. We're like 5 guys start on the baseline. We just run, the middle guy comes back, and then we get into what we call 3 short outlets after that. So like 1, this guy comes back, and then we have middle, like our 3 shorts off of that. We do probably, us and Augsburg do more off the baseline than anybody. We're like, if we can run the baseline, we're going to take advantage of that. We almost always use that. And this is what we call this single.
Why is that?
Because I think it gives you more space. It gives you more options. Like it distorts the defense a little bit. Like we have a couple different plays. Like this is single right here, but like where I'll just play this first.
Yeah.
You can see like where we run him out, and like this play right here, we know like right now, and we tell all our guys know this, if they don't have anybody on the ball, we're going to get this. Like we put our best free throw shooter here. We put our best passer here. We run them. If they don't have anybody on the ball, like we're going to get this. All right. Now the teams that put somebody on the ball, like, you got to make sure you have your secondary guy. You got to set up your cut. You know, we teach that. We have this guy comes back to post. We have one guy that goes long and one guy comes back to it. From that standpoint, but we have another play. So this is single. We have another play here where actually we bring this guy 35, like he actually comes back. We make a second baseline pass here, and then we look at this guy going deep.
Wow.
Okay. And so two things along with that, like preparation. Tommy, you asked this, like, so we have like my book. I don't chart anything during the game. I don't take notes, or I don't chart anything necessarily. Like I'll maybe make a note here or there, like on my play card. But like my notebook has all of our late game stuff. So like, and I have it organized where it's like, okay, like baseline under OB, sideline on OB, like I have all that stuff. Okay. And so like, if I know we have timeout and I'll say like a minute to go, like I'll say to like one of our assistants, I'll like, hey, hand me the notebook. I've done it 30 times or 50, whatever it is, but like I still want the physical paper that I can look at and just make sure. And I've got everybody's names, document, like where they're going to be. And so that I can show them that, plus I can show them the paper plus on the whiteboard. But in addition to that book, that notebook, I have 2 rules that are printed out. And this is one of them right here. So like the double play that I'm talking about. So like I have the rule printed off, like from the in-state rule book, about like being able to run the baseline and make that pass. Okay. So like if it ever comes up, like the other rule that I have is, and like you guys don't see this, but like at Division III, there's a few more teams that run like the Grinnell system. So where they play super fast, right? The whole thing where they shoot a bunch of threes. They also sub like the system, like they sub like 5 in, 5 out.
5 in, 5 out. Yeah.
Okay. There's a rule, Tom, you may know, like I know there's some schools in the East Coast, like there's a rule in the rule book where like if a team subs out 5 guys at a time, you as the opposing coach, like you can ask the official for like a substitution, like a pause in the game. It's like where you can match up.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So
that's interesting. Yeah.
I heard that from a coaching friend of mine a couple of years ago. I was like, all right, so because we were playing McAllister, who just like they were running the system. I said, okay, so I'm gonna print this rule off. I'm gonna have it in my book because I'm gonna tell the official, like, and if they ask me, I'm gonna show them this, and like this is what I want. Like, I want our 5 guys to match up with their 5 guys. I want to walk out to half court, like my son who plays first grade basketball. Okay, and you get to match.
They match them up. Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
That's what I want to happen. All right.
Yep.
I want to make a mockery. If you're gonna play the system, like this is what we're gonna do, and you're gonna sub 5 at a time. Like this is what I want to do. And it never came to that. But like I'm just saying that as like there's occasionally times where like something will come up and you'll see something from a team and you'll be like, oh shit, like, or like we're gonna do something, and like it happened in the St. Olaf game. The St. Olaf game, the officials like they misinterpreted the rule. So like they thought that with like less than 0.3 seconds on the clock, like the ball, like it had to be a one-hand tap. Well, it doesn't say that in the rules.
Nope. Yeah.
Okay. So like that's why there's I only bring that up because there's some things that happen every once in a while where like I'll keep that, and so like I'll have it as a reference, like, hey, no, this like that's not right, or this whatever. Like I've never had to use it, but
that's your 3rd rule for next year. That tap in rule.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now the thing is, like everybody, like especially in our league, all the officials are very aware of that now.
Yeah.
But, and even a lot of them across the country are aware of that. But yeah, there's something will happen next year. There'll be something that happens like that like we'll have to be prepared for. You just want to make sure that you're on top of it.
I think to add on to that, Ryan, too, is like, and you said this like during your jump ball thing with the guy cutting through the circle, but even like I love Damian Lillard. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA, super clutch. But on SOBs at the end of the game, he's going to flop. So and like I have it on all of my diagrams for Portland to tell the official that he's going to flop. And we tell our guys, show your hands. And when he falls over, hopefully they don't call foul. Like he always gets that call. And it's the same thing. Like we might be trapping, and it's a simple thing. And a lot of coaches do it already, but you just say, hey, we're not trying to foul immediately. We're trying to trap. And then on the first pass out, we might foul. Or vice versa, like, hey, FYI, we're going to foul immediately. and like telling the ref before it happens. I think, like you said, like the charge thing, like I think that's so vital, and you can tell them what's going to happen before it happens, and it can just help them out a little bit because they get tight cheeks at the end of games also.
For sure. The good officials, I will say, like, there's probably 3 or 4 officials in our league that will come up to our bench with inside of, like, in that situation and say, hey, are we fouling here?
Are we fouling? Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I so appreciate that as a coach, too. It's like, yes or no. Like, it's like that's the level of professional officiating that you want to see and hear. And, like, but there's other times where, like, you have to – and, like, those are all the, like, little details that, like, it's the nitty gritty stuff that like makes the difference, you know? And those are the things that, like I said, like we win or lose a game, like as a coach, and like, this is another macro thing. And like, I say this a lot, but like I tell our team this all the time, like the spectrum that you feel winning and losing a game, like is so vast. Like it has like, and everybody's heard this, but like, it is nowhere near as reflective of like actually how close the game is. The game is super close, and a call here, a missed free throw there, and like the elation that you feel when you win and the absolute agony you feel and the devastation that you feel when you lose are so polar. Like they're so far apart. And the game was like, it was like 1 or 2 plays. Like that was it. That was the difference. And those are the things as a coach that you beat yourself up for. Like, it's when you run the charge play like against St. Thomas and you forget to tell the ref like that, like you're gonna like do that. Like those are those little things that like, you know, like again, you can't control everything, like whatever, but like if you have those are the reasons that I feel guilty. I feel like I let our team down or like we didn't from that standpoint. So yeah, and there was I was gonna say too, Jonah, like. You brought this up. You showed the De'Aaron Fox missed free throw clip. The next day at our practice, and granted, like I was at the game, so like it was a little bit, but like I showed that clip to the team. And in our film session, I said, okay, we're going to be in a situation at some point this year where like we're going to have to miss a free throw intentionally. This is like just so everybody knows, like this is what we're going to do. Like here's the strategy. Here's what you do. Like we have our dive tap, but like you're the free. Like you get the ball, you go right away. You're going right away. You're not waiting. You're not going through your routine. You're going right away, and you're banging that thing off the front of the rim. And you guys saw the Duke. I don't know if you saw the Duke North Carolina game.
Yep.
Trey Jones
talked on it afterwards. Well, we played. It was like a week after that, after the Kings game. We played Gustavus, and we're actually up. Like we're up 2 with like 0.8 seconds left. We get fouled. We go to the free throw line, and so like we tell our guy to like miss, and he's like, okay, yeah, I know. And like he just takes that ball and he freaking rockets that thing right in front of the rim. And like so, and it was like I was so happy. I was like, he did exactly what we talked about. Now this is maybe not the situation that you want to do this, because if that ball goes out of bounds, all right, and nobody touches it, then like they get the ball. I didn't want to go there. It's like, hey, awesome execution. That's what we talked about. About it and you did it. Like that's great job. And
hey,
so
Ryan.
Again, like you have those like those are what's cool to see as coaches. Like that's fun to see. Like you guys execute that, you talk about that, you teach it. Like the dive tap, nothing gets me more excited than like a dive tap to like win the game. I just love that, because like those are those little things like that you can do that that matter, and to see your team execute that, that's like one of the biggest joys in coaching for me.
Hey Ryan, one that always bugs me is like, so you're they're shooting, right? So you're down, they're shooting, and like maybe they don't have anybody on the line, or they only have one guy on the line, because what you said about the clock starting on the touch, like
Yep.
it going out of bounds. Like how many times do you see a team like you got 4 guys on the block and they got one guy, and you're like rushing to go get the ball at the rim instead of just like box out the shooter, box out the one guy, let the ball, like who cares if it just bounces, get down the court someone, so you could do that. Like there's another one that like it happens often enough, but like, are we thinking about it? Are we trying to practice it? Do we have a plan for it? Because it could get you a game, or at least you can get you a decent shot. And like the way kids are practicing shots and stuff now, you never know what can happen,
For sure. The last thing I was going to bring up, and as more of like a discussion, and like you guys might talk about this, like, so you guys were talking about the NFL and like in other like Jonah, you were talking about the time and like Belichick's thing about the time, right?
Yep.
So I think in the playoffs you saw the whole deal with the punt and like taking the delay a game.
Yep.
So like in the New England Tennessee game, there was the whole deal about like, you know,
Taking a penalty and
yeah, and like I'm sure the NFL at some point, the rules committee, they'll get together and that'll be a point of discussion. In college, I think in college basketball, probably the closest we have to that is in San Francisco is doing this more than anybody, or at least I think they're getting maybe a little bit more exposure for it. Like that's probably not the right word, but like they're fouling at the end of the first half. So like if they're in the bonus, so like teams will foul, you have fouls to give, okay, fine. They want to essentially intentionally get in the bonus, and then they will foul like the worst free throw shooter intentionally on the other team. So like to steal a possession. We haven't done that. Like, I don't know, Tommy, Zach, like, I don't know if that's something you guys, like, I'm sure you've had discussion about, but it's funny because I thought that was like a pretty, and I think this just goes to, again, all of us, like we all steal from everybody. Like, I thought I was like, holy shit, that's a pretty new concept. I honestly wasn't really that familiar with that before this year. It was like a week ago. I was watching the famous Duke Kentucky game, Christian Laettner game. I don't know if you guys were watching that on CBS. Kentucky did that at the end of the first half in 1993.
Wow.
They were in the bonus and they intentionally fouled whoever for Duke. I think it was Brian Day. I don't know. I can't remember who it was. And I was like, holy shit. Like that is like, I had no idea that like, that's fantastic. Again, like all this stuff, it's cyclical and it happens, but yeah, I think that's one of like the situations that's now getting a little bit more, discussion with college coaches. Is that something you guys have talked, Tommy or Zach?
I know that Kyle Smith from working like the Columbia kid, like they're always like, that's where like the guy from San Francisco has ties to him. I'm pretty sure. I think that, so they have ties to that. But you know what I always ask myself, because the teams that I've been head coaches for have been small teams. So the thing is I might foul you, but I might not be able to get the freaking defensive rebound off the free throws.
Right.
I mean, like that can change the dynamic of, do I even want to foul you? Because if I can't get the rebound, I'm putting myself in a situation where maybe I can lose the game now. Like that's weighed on my mind when I would always hear like just the different conversations. Here at Williams or, Bates, but Williams, we had a big team. I could care less. I'll foul you. If we don't get the rebound, we're going to change some financial aid or something around here. You know what I mean? But when you have a small team, like, you may have to pick it. Like, how do you want to lose? You know what I'm saying, Jonah? Like, because a little, like dive tap. If you ran dive tap against me when I was at Johnson, I would have lost that every time because I wouldn't have had enough size or strength to do anything. That could have been your whole offense. You could have just come down and just run that back,
Yeah, the thing too I'll add about the free throw to kind of what you were talking about, Tommy, and like so I've been like
down by one.
Jonah, you showed the Anthony Davis example.
Yeah.
And like off of essentially free throw offense. And like I've seen that. Like when he was in New Orleans and like they would run that and like I've so badly wanted to do that because like we have a pretty good post player, like we do that, but the trade-off of that is like we're gonna put somebody smaller in there. And I think in the NBA, like there's less free throw percentage in general terms are higher for the most part, or like there's less. I don't know how prevalent the offensive rebounding is. Like I think for me the fear of giving up the offensive rebound outweighs like what I perceive as the risk to take one of your best rebounders or your bigger bodies and like to have him vacate that spot. Maybe that's, maybe shouldn't.
Funny because we've always talked about like the Lakers are doing it now, obviously, but like we've always talked about just full court pressing the point guard. Like
on that play or just like.
So let them do it. It's fine. And like we make our free throw and just stay, not even like full court double team, just like point guard, pick them up full court. And 2-man, don't let them come off the pin down. And okay, now he's going to dribble it down and there's going to be 17 on the clock, 16 on the clock, and he might still punch it into AD, and now there's 12 on the clock. That's a lot better than a spin out lob with 20 on the shot clock.
For sure. And I would say too, I bet if Alvin Gentry were on this call, I bet he would say the counter to that is, okay, you take AD out of the free throw line, like that's fine. You might give up 3 on, but like they're also not going to put a small down there on him, so they're probably going to take their big out of there as well to go match up, or there's some likelihood of that. So like you're actually the one that is putting the pressure on by doing that.
Yeah. And I remember when Minnesota was doing that a couple of years ago, they would put, like when the 5-man was shooting the free throw is when they would put, so they'd put Karl Towns down on the other end so that you would cross match, and that they automatically had that mismatch. If the guard was shooting it, they'd put the wings down and the corners deep.
The other thing too is like if the 4 takes it out, the 3 can run the opposite wing, and Minnesota was good at that, and Wiggins would get that all the time.
Get that done.
Trail in that slot.
In that slot.
Weak side, exactly.
That's the only way he could score a couple years ago.
Come on.
He's got some championship with the number 1 pick. So, Ryan, I found that St. Olaf thing. If I might just show it real quick.
Yeah.
You guys can see it?
Yep.
Point 2. Oldies down by 1 point. Dominic Bledsoe to inbound. Looking. Inbound. Hit by Diggins.
Yeah, that's a bad call.
So a couple things. So like the kid 31 that scored, he played volleyball. He's like a really good like club volleyball player. And so he, like, they had him in that spot, and like they got that play from, like, their assistant got that play, and he kind of popped off. Like their assistant kind of popped off afterwards. Like he posted something about like, I guess my secret play is not so secret more, which like I'm not a big fan of a lot of the self-promotion stuff, but like at the same time, like it's a good play. Really good play. And it's one of those, it's like there's some pretty good misdirection in there, and like all of it's personnel. And again, like that's a 1 in a, I don't know how many times does he make that out of 100, maybe 5 or whatever, not many, maybe between 5 and 10, but yeah, I mean, that was pretty good. That was pretty good action that they had there.
That's a bad call. That's a tough.
Those officials got suspended for.
I was going to say, I thought I read that they got suspended. Yeah.
I mean, if that happened to Tommy, he would have been owing the league a lot of money.
I'd be in jail. If I didn't have kids, I would have been in jail. I would still be chasing them down.
Yeah, and the issue was they told the coaches beforehand that it couldn't be, their interpretation was that it had to be with one hand. So they had predetermined that make or miss before that play, that if they put 2 hands on it, like they were blowing it dead. Didn't matter. And so, and again, they were wrong. And again, I said, like, if official came and told me that, I would most likely trust, unless I had the printout in my notebook that I came, like, I would trust that they knew what they were talking about, you know, which is pretty unfortunate. So, yeah, so that's what I got. Like, I can share that PowerPoint. If you guys have questions or whatever, obviously feel free. If you guys want those clips, I can share those too. But again, I want to do a little more kind of macro-ish too.
Yep.
No, that was awesome. I think and like we've talked about this. I think just to spoil one of your little secrets also, Ryan, like something he does that's really well, and he calls a lot of maybe all of their BOBs. Or UOBs, as you guys call them, but he'll stand up and kind of walk towards the baseline when they're shooting at their own basket in front of their bench. And I asked you once why you did that, and I don't know if you remember what you told me. You were like, it gives me more time. You're
That's
like,
exactly right.
It gives me more time to figure out what I'm gonna.
Lets me look at my card and figure out.
I was like, it's great from a scouting perspective, NBA, I mean, Spygate, what the heck, but it's my job to just stare what the coach is saying in the point guard. And like, if the coach is walking towards the bench or towards the basket this way, and he puts up the 2 or 10 or whatever it is, I thought that was brilliant. And maybe it wasn't as brilliant, but and it gives you time to distinguish left and right and all that.
And it also, and that's where, like, when we tell our inbounder, hey, like, stand in play, like, stand inbounds, like, make the official, like, physically move you back or whatever, to give you an extra 2 seconds. It gives me another 2 seconds, potentially, something like that. So,
Zach, you want to take the reins?
Yeah, sure. I'll be fairly brief, I think, because a lot of stuff's been covered. But I also took more of a macro type approach to this. Let me just pull my notes up here, and kind of wanted to talk about the process of getting. I'm in more of a support staff role, so I'm trying to help my head coach get prepared for late game situations, and to help our staff get prepared for situations. So one thing that we incorporated this year was working on end of game, or I guess I'll give some background, and that last couple of years I really struggled. This was my first year here at Illinois. They really struggled in close games. It was well below a 500 clip over coach's first 2 years here. So we knew that figuring out a way to create a sense of poise and understanding and calm in late game situations was, for both players and staff, was a major point of emphasis going into the season. So many games in the Big Ten are 1 and 2 possession games. We played 12 games this season that were 1 possession game with a minute left. So that's, 35-40% of our season. So what we did early on was we kind of had some fun with it, but I just kind of is anything showing up?
Yep.
So I pulled up. This was more of off season, first couple pages, but just different basketball situations, and we cut these all out and put them in a hat, and would draw a situation out of a hat, 1 or 2 or 3 in a segment of practice every day in the preseason. So we'd split the teams up, orange and blue, obviously. Sometimes the head coach would get involved. Sometimes he would stay out and watch. But the reason we did this was to put ourselves in more situations, and have a feeling of winning and losing in practice every day. Coach loves keeping things competitive, so this was a way to kind of break things up and have a little moment. The guys like to come over and draw stuff out of the hat themselves, and they had a lot of fun with it, which I think is important. And then most importantly, beyond that, it got our staff organized, and we knew what we were going to do in certain late game situations. So, we had our 40, or I think there were 75 or so in there at the start of the year, and we got through those by the time that we got to conference play, which was the goal. So we.
Zach,
Yep.
So because I have a question I want to make sure I get this.
Sure.
So were these picked out live in practice, like you as a staff didn't know what 3 situations could come out, or did they do it before and then you guys could prepare for the situation?
No, we did it live in practice at the start of the year. Now that evolved as the year went on, and I'll get to that in a little.
I think that's. Well, I was going to say I think that's great because, as the coach, we don't know what's going to happen sometimes, but we got to be ready for the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it tested our processes of how we thought about late game situations, and some of them are, it'll be like a minute situation, and other situations kind of come up within that little block. But that was something great that we did. So we actually ended up going 9-3 in those games that were 1 possession games in the last minute. And we just thought that was because that was something that we emphasized in all of our games that were categorized as close games, that was the first thing that we showed in film the next day, was the last 3 minutes of the game. And the coaches never said a word. We had the players walk through those clips, and they would talk about what happened, what we did, and what we should have done. And they led those film sessions and kind of had those opportunities to, develop some of that awareness. Now, I'll pull up a clip just kind of where I thought, sorry to any potential Hoosiers.
I grew up a Hoosiers fan. Come on, man. Tommy went to IU.
I went to IU and transferred out though because Bobby Knight didn't have walk-on tryouts, so I couldn't be there long.
So this is kind of a good example of, like, I don't know if we make this play at the beginning of the year. So we had fouled this kid on a drive. He actually misses both free throws, but this is the second free throw. Is that showing up full screen?
Yep.
Okay. And so kind of a fluke play, tap out, they get the ball, which sucks. Anyway, we get on the ball here, and just in terms of our situational awareness, knowing that we have a timeout, number one here, Trent Frazier, this is what we talked about every day, is that, okay, if we have a timeout, if we need to call a timeout, don't just be, randomly calling a timeout. It can be anyone calling a timeout, and make sure that you go right up to that official and get that timeout. So number one actually goes right into the official's face there and gets that timeout, preventing the jump ball, which they had the arrow.
I was just looking for the arrow to see who had it.
Yep, they had the arrow, so saves us a possession. We go down. I actually think we missed the free throws, and our execution there missed the front end. Our execution wasn't great. They missed a half court shot, but that was the kind of poise that we wanted to develop in some of that early season stuff. Now, as the year got on, we went on and we felt like our guys knew that if we're up by 3 and there's under 8 seconds left, we're going to foul. Our guys knew that was ingrained in their head, because they'd seen that so many times over the course of situations. We would, any time that we saw that anyone on our staff saw something that happened in a game that we thought was unique, I would pull those clips and we would show that just on our TV on the court at the start of practice, kind of like what you did with the De'Aaron Fox clip. And again, the players would talk about it, and then we would, correct them, what their thinking was, what we would do, what they saw, what they think we would do, and why we would do it. And then usually we would then go to that situation in practice. The example that I pulled was actually the Duke North Carolina free throw, because I actually heard that interview, and one of the coaches at Duke, I was like a babysitter for me growing up, so I actually called him that next day and asked some of their kind of why they did what they did. So I'll go through that because I thought his perspective on that play was pretty unique and stuff that I hadn't really thought of. So we started out practice showing these 3 clips from that game. Obviously, the first one that we all saw, that everyone's seen. So you have Tyus Jones at the line. You see him grab the ball, chuck it at the rim, go get it, make a great play. And then actually North Carolina misses 2 more free throw blockouts in overtime. So that was the other thing that we were trying to emphasize was, we can't have those kind of casual deals at the end of the game. I mean, they're not even trying to get it and, tip it out of bounds, whatever. So I'm going to go back to that first clip and kind of walk through what they talked about. I know that Tyus had that interview after the game. I don't know if you saw that, or Trey Jones, Tyus Jones I think that's the 9th time I said that.
Minnesota kids. So
yeah, no doubt.
Boys.
Minnesota boys, and then Michael Hurt, Matthew Hurt.
Yeah,
is Trey stole his chance at glory there with the offensive rebound.
No question. So the first thing that you see, and I think that he did this backwards, but what they told me was that that little side
Yes.
step
Mm-hmm.
is kind of to indicate like which side he's trying to miss it on.
Yep.
Going opposite of the direction that he shoots it. And the reason that they do that is because it increases the chances of the ball not ending up in a crowded area.
Yep.
And B, it limits the chances of accidentally making the shot. And so the main reason though the main reasons that they do the line drive miss is simply a numbers game. Everyone talks about high and soft. Well, you're going 3-on-4 in there for a rebound. If you throw it a line drive and you can clear that last line of defense, you have a 3-on-2 situation to get that ball. And so obviously here it ends up being a
3-on-1.
3-on-1 if they have 4 guys in there. Yes, 3-on-1.
Yeah.
I'm blind. 3-on-1.
Correct.
So numbers situation, they have no chance. So that was the main thing that I had never thought of it that way with the numbers situation. And so we ended up we put it in and probably took it to the extreme here. We never had a situation in a game, but we lined him up, took a step off center, so he knew that we knew that we wanted to miss the ball to the right. And we tried at only putting one guy in there, and now I think that most teams would probably take that guy off the line. But I wouldn't be surprised either way, honestly, because teams aren't necessarily thinking that way. So he shot it, and it kind of caromed right out there for that 3. Like there are kind of wonky bounces that you can get. And there's another one kind of to the corner. So making it a foot race deal instead of a brute strength deal is kind of something that was intriguing to me. And I guess I'm glad we didn't come to that situation in a game because it's a pretty desperate situation to be in. But I know that we would have had fun and probably gotten a shot or thrown it incredibly hard off the backboard. I didn't show the 12 times that he tried to hit the rim and threw a scud missile off the backboard. But yeah, I thought that was the most unique concept that we saw late game. And it made a lot of sense, but just drilling it and repeating it every day and getting those guys in the habit of loving late game situations, to where they didn't feel like that moment was bigger than them. And they tended to do the things that we did. There would be situations where, okay, we know that we're a team that fouls up 3, and we know that if we're up by 4 or more with under 8 seconds, we're in our soft 2-2-1 press to make the other team pass. So they know, okay, we're at the line, we're up 2, they just fouled us. He made the first, okay. He misses it, we're in Geronimo. He makes it, we're in 22. And they just know that. We don't need to say that to them. Now we do, of course, but it's second nature. And just having that familiarity was something that was good for our guys. And the unique thing, we did those every day. We tape for our shoot arounds. We kind of go 5-on-5 a little bit and shoot around live. So we'll do situations and shoot arounds too. And it's a little different, but it's a good way to kind of get them to simulate. Usually those are all tailored for the starting group to win, just so they can get the feeling of winning a game the morning of the game. And we had success with it, and probably just because we have one good player who made a lot of good shots, a lot of tough shots, contested shots that probably aren't good shots, but we'll probably go 3-9 in those situations next year. But we felt confident as a staff just from simply having our guys see it, because our guys aren't the smartest necessarily at our level. We probably tend to value athleticism over intelligence, and had to play some guys who don't know. So we came into the year with the mindset that they don't know what they don't know, and that's not their fault. And we're starting from square one in every possible situation on the game. We're exposing them to before it happens when it counts. So that was kind of our philosophy in making that happen this year.
Zach, will you talk about like the process after practice, what you guys would do as a staff? What you told me.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Will you talk about what you guys did as a staff after practice, like after those?
Oh yeah. So we would usually, early in the year, especially when we're trying to solidify our package for every situation, we would sit down and watch the situations as a staff and decide if that was something that we liked and wanted to kind of, make A1 on the top of our late game package for, baseline out of bounds, need a 3. This is our play. We tried to keep it really simple so that we didn't have any confusion late game. We had baseline out of bounds, need 3, boom, everyone knows what we're doing. Baseline out of bounds, need 2, boom, here's what we're doing. And then, most other things we had timeouts, and we knew, okay, if they're pressing, we're in our football out of bounds play after a timeout. We knew that. So it was identifying what that choice was for us as a staff. And it was, we would decide and debate and probably waste a lot of time doing it that we didn't need to, but it was just good for us all to kind of, develop cohesion and limit that confusion and chaos that can exist at the end of a game in a huddle. So
if you guys,
I like that. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you were gonna add something to your process, not necessarily play or anything like that, but to your process of doing it all next year, especially knowing you were so good at it, like maybe that builds confidence for next year. Maybe you're overconfident. Maybe there's different situations. Like, what will you bring to the staff to try to incorporate into your process next season?
And I know I've talked to you about it a lot, but just having a situations card for coach so that he doesn't get confused and say the wrong things that besides what we talked about, because he's forgetful. He's a little older, but a lot forgetful, not that old. So he'll say one thing in practice and then he'll make up a play call in the middle of a game. Like, so just something that he has. So it says, okay, baseline out of bounds, need 3. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And he just has it, down 3, less than 8 seconds, fouling, more than 8 seconds, play it straight up. Just so that he can organize his thoughts a little better. And then the other thing that I want to do is have a better process for having the diagrams available on the bench. Now I have a binder that we'll look at when we're drawing them. But I think next year we're going to probably laminate those so that he can just kind of put that piece of paper on the board and can kind of draw on the laminated sheet. Obviously we're not allowed to have iPads or anything like that. So that's kind of the closest thing that we can do to eliminating human error and drawing up plays late game.
Would you have, like, so I'm envisioning, like the play, it's got different frames. That's what the word I was looking for. Would you have it framed out, like 4 on the page? If there are 4 frames, would you have 1 and go each page with it? Or
we played around with it some, but we had every play was broken up into 2 frames and it was laminated front and back. So you would do the first part and then flip it over and finish up the play that way.
It's funny because that is something that, like, we spend all this time preparation, plan this and that, but like, think about it. It's one of the things you actually do the least.
Yeah.
It's to draw, even if you know it well, like just to draw it maybe upside down to like, like all these things. That's why when we're practicing these situations, it's good for us, like as the coach. So like to do it, like I've seen, I know Mike Neighbors, he had like a situation card and he'd pull them out. Yeah. When I did it, I wanted to like know the situation just because like I wanted to be able to like to do, but I like also trying to have a random one so that it would really catch me off guard. Like, here's what we're going to do or whatever. But it's tough. And like, how much do we know more about people learn different ways? So maybe in the huddle, like a kid can get it with the flip, like he's got it. One kid you might have to draw it for. One kid might need a video. Who knows what's going on nowadays. But
I remember, like, to that point, we asked our Sky team one year to – yeah, exactly. Like, the consummate backup center, we asked everyone to draw up, like, a play that we had, right?
Mm-hmm. So
all of them drew it this way. And then our one backup center drew it this way. Like, that's how she drew the board. So we're sitting there like, huh? So we asked her, we said, see, like, why did you do it that way? She was like, that's how I see the game. I'm I'm always in the paint.
Yeah, good
that's
point.
How I see the game. And we were all like, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
like, I've never thought of it that way.
I know.
And
well,
like,
even that, like,
Fox likes looking at the board sideways. So that Lou kind of balances like doing it that way and that,
Christ. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But it's like you said, it's all about the players learning styles and how it doesn't matter if you can draw it up, like, can they execute what you're trying to draw up?
And goes back to the beginning, like really practicing timeouts, like really practicing them, I've heard of teams. I'm not this crazy. I don't need this, but like, the coaches who have like whoever's in the point guard sitting there, the 2, 3, 4, 5, so like they know who to look at, like where it is. But, anything that can save time, because, us at the lower levels, we don't have the freaking 5-minute NBA timeouts. We got to get shit done. You know what I mean? Like, you know what? I was talking to Trey the other day, and I'm curious, like, so Division III, the timeout's blown. Like, I've seen more and more coaches like go talk to their staff. Like me personally, I'm always just talking to my assistants or to the staff throughout. Yeah. Like, man, when I call timeout, we know what it is. Like, we got to get in there.
You sit down immediately. You're tired.
We don't have time. We don't have time. Like the clock's running. You know what I mean? They're gonna.
How long are your timeouts?
What are they, Ryan? Like a minute? What, we get a minute 15 for a full and 30s?
Yeah, they're about a minute basically. That's always I lean more towards like what Tommy's talking about, where like I want to get in there.
I have no choice. Yeah.
Guy is the opposite. He's like he wants to stand there for like 45 seconds, and like he needs like okay, who's in the game, like and like it like the organization thing. It's like okay, well like no, like that he's not in the game right now. Like we can't do that. like and so. So like I'm way more into like just get in there and like I get it though, and like some coaches like they let their defensive coach talk for the first 30 seconds or whatever, chat, but yeah, I was gonna ask, so Zach, what are some of your observations a year in the Big Ten? I mean, looking at special situations and who excelled, like who impressed you, what coaches, what programs, who do you think did a good job? Was there any that you thought maybe didn't execute to the level? And again, outcome is not always like reflective, because like I know Minnesota lost a lot of close games. I don't know if that means like if it's a reflection on the coaching or not, but just in general.
It does. in that specific case, it does. But they would like we would just be watching game. Like we'd always have Big Ten games on. If we have a road game, it always seemed like they played the night before us. So we'd always have that game on the projector at dinner. And it always seemed like they were just doing something inexplicable in the last 2 minutes to lose a game. Like, I mean, I think that that team had more issues than probably they would care to admit, but I don't think that their two best players necessarily got along particularly well, from what I've heard, and I think some of that carried over. You'd see, I mean, Daniel Atur is a pro, and I can't remember a time that he got a touch in a scoring area in the last 2.5 minutes of the game.
Not in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of that Maryland game, the Iowa game, and Wisconsin.
For sure.
Those three are the ones that stick out in my mind. Like, man, there's got to be something going on here. And like he'd get an offensive putback, get an and one, and like give him a chance to win it. So I don't, I actually thought that they ran pretty good offense for the most part, and then just late game, everyone tried to be a hero there. But I think that Izzo's teams are always really well disciplined. Like I've never, I from the outside looking in, like I didn't see it. Like obviously you see the wins, like yeah, he's just got really good players, but kind of seeing them night to night, I think you gain so much respect for just their level of execution. They don't do anything that's complex at all. They're masters of the simple. They run the floor really, really hard every single time. They set their wide pin downs at the exact right angle every single time. And they get that 2-on-1 for a split second, and they have good players that can make that play. But they're just so disciplined in the simple that it becomes hard to guard, and so much of their offense and their game is unscripted, which I think is the hardest thing to guard, especially with players of that caliber. I think they were pretty good in late games. Wisconsin really executed well, won a lot of late games this year. And a lot of that was simply making shots. They had kids that jumped up and made some shots. But Michigan State always stayed simple. Wisconsin was complex a little bit, always ran some sort of pin down. Juwan Howard always would run a hammer play at Michigan, and they'd always miss it. But so it doesn't it doesn't matter. It's just we'd either run 1-4 flat for our best player or slip out of a guard on guard ball screen with our best player. Like it's not necessarily how you can trick them. It's putting guys in a position to have a little bit of an edge and give the best player a chance to make a play.
I think two things just that have come into my head from what you said, Tommy, actually. But like last year during summer league, we were experimenting with the iPad, and I think for all, like Ryan, you actually take the board a lot, but like you were saying, sometimes guy wants to figure out like who's where, and Tommy, you were talking about guys sitting in, the point guards there, shooting guards there. One thing we did last summer league is like I would have the iPad and I would put in the point guard's initials at the top, and then the shooting guards next to him, small forward, power forward, center. And like as he made subs at the beginning of the timeout, I would change them, and then I would hand it to him, and he would kind of know what he wanted to do. But even like that's a way to save, with your 27-second timeouts in Division III, it's a way to save a little bit of time. I know some of the teams that use the iPads in the NBA, whether it's Toronto or Brooklyn, like the coach whose scout it isn't on the front of the bench, I think has it, and he's constantly updating the subs. So when he hands it to the head coach during the timeout, he has his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 already there. So that's just a little thing that maybe for Zach, you like, whoever has the whiteboard, you can hand Underwood the board, and it will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on the bottom half of the court or above the out of bounds, wherever. And the other thing, Bob Byer, our defensive coordinator this year, he does a really good job of timeouts, getting us out on time. It's one of those, it might be more prevalent in the NBA, but like getting a delay of game for staying in your timeout too long. So he, as soon as the first horn, he stands.
That's what I would do. That's what I would do for us with the getting us out.
Yeah.
The referees appreciate that.
Yeah, but like if that's the scorer's table and then those are the chairs, like he would stand right behind that first player right there, and he literally holds up like a 1, like first horn, and then second horn, get out, and like he makes his little adjustments to the team when the other coaches go to half court. He normally just stays right there. Him and I will talk a little bit. He might go out to half court for a second and tell Luke, like, come on, man, it's time to go. And then especially
5 minutes later, right?
5 minutes warning.
Later, yeah.
We only have 12 minutes left in this one.
But but especially after we've received a delay of game, Buddy checks in
Yeah.
with a shirt tucked in or something like that. It's just one of those things I think having an assistant in charge of getting the team out is really helpful. And, like wherever you are, Zach, that could be you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it can go unnoticed until it's not done and you get a technical and, all that stuff.
Hey, Jonah, what you said about saving time in the timeouts too. I picked up from D Brown when I was in the D League, especially like when you're going to call timeouts. Of course, you could advance the ball, but even if you just know you're going to call when they're shooting free throws or whatever, he'd have the board and he'd start like putting it in and drawing and like, getting his mind right with it. And I definitely did that because like there's just so much going on. I mean, like, Division III, sometimes, like, my situation. It was just me. I was the assistant.
You were the coaching staff.
I was like, holy cow, so, and it really just helped me, like, to process, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I know who's in, set, and then bang, I can go right into the timeout. And, like, it makes a difference. When you're kind of calm, cool, and collected, then that kind of carries over to the group, You can show them the timeout thing I sent you, too.
Yeah. To piggyback off that first was, the Spurs have always done that back when it was Budenholzer and Brett Brown and those guys. Like, they would actually have the board and they would draw the first action because Pop, I guess, likes to stay in the game. So they would draw, if it's that scissors play, they would draw the 3 and the 2 and the 4 X in off the 5 to the corners. And now, you have a bunch of different options out of it.
Yep.
That way Pop can stay in the game and he's handed the board. The initials are there and they've already cut off. So like last year, end of game, Brian Keefe and I would do that for him. And it helped him a lot because he knows what's happening, but so many people are saying so many different things and the head coach is asking this. It's just hard to take in all that information. So again, the head coach has to be comfortable with it. If it's the defensive guy and he's doing it, he's got to be comfortable with it. And the person putting it on has to be right and has to know, no, I'm subbing, or Ryan, you're an inbounder who always is inbounding, is the inbounder. You got to make sure it's right. But if you can figure out a system for that, I think it's really good. Tommy sent me this. It's funny because I saw can you guys see this?
Yeah.
I saw what's his name? Chris Quinn. That's their assistant. Yeah, so I saw him with the whiteboard this year, and I was trying to see for my scout and see what it said on it, and I was looking at every angle. I couldn't see. So this is actually a really good idea.
I think it's unbelievable. I haven't seen anybody else doing it, but us four will be now. But
I would add possession arrow.
Yeah, I have more stuff on. Yeah, definitely for us, because that makes a difference of if you jump on, you have to
call timeout. Yeah.
But I mean, just to get yourself organized, and it's right there and reminding, and people are telling you. But again, some people will see it, and small thing, but a big thing,
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, we can go another 2 hours. Some of us can sleep till 2 tomorrow.
Wife, I'll be down there. Coronavirus or not, I'll be down there with you.
You're more than welcome. No, I appreciate all of you guys so much. Though this was like
This is great.
I don't know, not more than I thought it would be.
How'd you sign up for 40 minutes? It's almost 4 hours later. You signed us up for 40 minutes.
I'm telling you, at 35 minutes, the message popped up. It said a gift from Zoom or something.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome.
Signed us up for 40 minutes. Wow.
Great.
Yeah, it was. Thank you, everybody.
I don't know what we got left to talk about.
I can email if you guys want that PowerPoint. I can send that too. If you guys want any of those clips, let me know.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
But no, I thought that was a lot of really good stuff.
That was fun.
Yeah. No, hopefully I'll talk to you guys all next couple days, and hopefully we do it again. Maybe we grow it. Maybe we only let me talk for 10 minutes next time. I mean, the options are endless. But again, hopefully, obviously, this Corona thing is reaching its peak soon, and we can all get on with more normal lives. But we'll just wait and kind of see how it plays out and make our adjustments and go from there, I guess.
Definitely. Everybody stay safe and healthy, first and foremost.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good stuff, guys. Good job.
Awesome.
I'll talk to you guys.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Yeah.